good. So we are it's Easter Monday, and I hope everyone had a meaningful and enjoyable Easter. And I'm ready to turn this meeting over to the county.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, Commissioner, staff, and guests. We have a packed agenda this morning. We're going to do some follow-up from the last budget workshop. There were some questions that the board has, and we'll have staff provide an update. I'll do a quick update on the board retreat. We'll have a budget update on fiscal year 26 with year-end estimates. Talk about our internal service fund and benefits update. We do have our benefits consultant here from MMA that's going to give an overview of where we are in terms of our health insurance fund. And then we'll talk about fiscal year 27 budget preview. And so with that, we'll just go ahead and get started with our March 16th budget workshop update. I'm going to ask Lee Plunkett, our deputy CFO, as well as Kimberly Bussey, our deputy budget director, to come up. They're going to tag team a part of this section.
Good morning. So one of the questions that came from the last workshop was about bond ratings across the country and how that looked. And so our financial advisor, First Tryon, was able to pull some data. I found a little bit of data, but I just wanted to pass along what we found. It's not perfect example of what you're looking for, but I think it gives some interesting snapshot of where we're at. So this is from Moody's rating agency, a publication they had. And so in this first chart here, it shows the different sectors and where their ratings are across the spectrum of possible ratings. And so I've highlighted local governments here. Obviously, that's where we live. And so you can see here a majority of local governments are rated in the AAA to a few notches below AAA. So a good investment for investors. And so you can see, compared to some other sectors, local government is a pretty strong sector when it comes to bond ratings overall. And so because we're AAA currently, we would reside here in the darkest blue segment. First Tryon did pull some data. They were able to get a look at Moody's ratings across the Southeast, so about 13 states. And so we took a look at the way North Carolina compared to other Southeastern states. And, I don't know if anecdotally is the right word, but the Southeast is considered one of the strongest regions when it comes to local government bond ratings. So when you look at North Carolina specifically, you can see all but one unit that gets rated in North Carolina, cities and counties, all but one unit falls within those blue shaded lines that you see over here. So again, either AAA down to the AA3, which is considered a strong investment from the market's perspective. Obviously, we're sitting in the AAA bucket, so 46% of North Carolina cities and counties are rated AAA, compared to all of the Southeast, about 18.2%. So again, North Carolina is a very strong state when it comes to the AAA rating. And I think when you add all these together, the AAA down to the AA3, I've got 98.6% of our units are rated in that category, compared to the Southeast is 83.6%. So we're trending above, the rest of the Southeast, which is again a strong region. And one note on the states in the Southeast that was, I thought, unusual, but Texas is included there, so we have another big state that's included there that is in the Southeast, along with the ones that you would normally expect. And then the next slide is really just, I was able to find a snapshot of data from S&P related to only AAA rated counties. And so you can see here, I just ranked them by the number of AAA rated counties in by state. So you can see Virginia, California, then North Carolina. And so what we did here, I don't know how many, in the S&P's data, I don't know how many were actually rated. So I just looked how many counties are in the state and compared the percentage there. And so we've got about 12%. And we measure really closely to Virginia. So Virginia's got 95 counties, we've got 100, so we're right there. California is a little bit of an outlier. They've got one more than us, but they've only got 58 counties in that whole state, which I thought was interesting given the size of California. So again, I think it just shows the strength of North Carolina and where we're at, and how well North Carolina is viewed in the markets from all investors when it comes to bond ratings. Have to answer any questions based on that?
Could you go back to the previous slide with the bar chart?
Yeah.
Just that, the full bar is 100% of all the things rated.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, what the part that's in the above A1 is less than half of the total for local government. If I'm looking at that
I
right.
think it may be because here,
Well,
this is
that's rate
actually,
considered.
yeah, this is the actual, I know
That's the A3.
yeah. This is where the double A3 falls right here. I think it's the color is
So
a
we're
little bit off,
right. Yeah, I was just using the shades of blue there.
Yeah. So I think it's right around probably 65% or so, if I had to make a guess.
Thank you. Questions?
All right, the next follow-up item, there were questions at the last meeting in regards to the sheriff's office budget in comparison with peer communities. Kimberly Bussey is going to provide an update on that follow-up.
Good morning, Commissioners. Good morning. So, looking at the Sheriff's Office fiscal year 26 budget in comparison to some of our peer communities, this is just a straightforward look at the size of the expenditure budget. And we're in orange in all of these, by the way, if I'm sorry. The Sheriff's Office budget, as a percent of the total expenditure budget, general fund expenditure budget, we're the highest at 13% in comparison to our peers. And we do get revenue in the Sheriff's Office, particularly for our community policing contracts. And so if we look at a net county percentage of the total general fund expenditure budget for Forsyth County and our peers, we're at 11%. And the population of our peer communities varies pretty significantly, especially for the big two, Wake and Mecklenburg. So if we look at this in a per capita perspective, you say that we are the highest at $206 compared to our peers. This is just a reminder of what is statutorily responsible for the Sheriff's Office to do in North Carolina. Serve orders, civil processes and writs, custody of the jail, transport inmates, and courtroom security services. And as we're looking at our peer communities, I want to show the size of the workforce of the staff. And because not all communities are quite the same in how they perform and what services they perform, just a snapshot for the types of things that we do that are statutorily responsible. And we know Mecklenburg has they do a contract with the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department for their law enforcement services, so they look a little bit different. But that amount is included in this comparison data. And then Durham and Buncombe are pretty similar to us in the services that they perform. And then a year-to-year comparison of the Sheriff's Office budget. These blue columns just show the expenditure budget year-to-year. The orange line is the percent of our total general fund budget over the years. In fiscal year 26, we are at $78.9 million and 13.4% of our total general fund budget for the sheriff. And what does that mean in comparison to our total budget? Here's a look at the Sheriff's Office and all other services. Well, the top services in the county, that's for comparison. Kind of a high-level look at comparison data. Is there anything else, any questions you all would like to know? You want to go back and dig through this?
So for me, it's, in all fairness to our sheriff's department, he's responsible for the safety and security of this county.
Correct.
Which is inclusive in my district for District A, right? And not having the details in terms of what he's responding to in versus other counties, I feel like we probably are not adequately supporting him in the way that we should. And I understand that it's overages, but the overages is because of the work that he's having to do in our communities. I mean, we see there were like 3 incidents this weekend with youth. So we have to do a better job in terms of either with our school systems, because we're feeling it in our sheriff's department. So that's my reaction to this
Well,
response.
do we need to talk about the role of the police department and how police, it's interesting, if you look at those peer communities, obviously Charlotte-Mecklenburg is really not in the mix. I mean, well, or if you included the police department, they would be in the mix. I mean, if you put the kind of police department for, because essentially they have their metro government, or metro police. And, but essentially that part, the reason there is a city police department is to enforce crime levels in the city, and that's additional support in addition to what the sheriff. And I think we do a lot of things where, we're really not, while we can enforce crime in the city with the sheriff's office, we're really not charged with it because we have the Winston-Salem PD is kind of the first on the scene. Am I explaining that correctly?
Yeah, so I'll go back to it. Charlotte-Mecklenburg does have metro policing, but Mecklenburg is still paying for the service. And so it is reflected in their budget, even though they don't have like the positions for it. So it's the same as for us, the sheriff's office is provided funding for, similar to the other communities like Durham and Buncombe, for unincorporated Forsyth, we're not talking about for law enforcement, for unincorporated Forsyth, and the municipalities who want to pay for those services, such as Rural Hall, Clemens, Louisville, Kernersville, and Winston-Salem have their own police department. So in other jurisdictions that have their own police departments, then the sheriff's office would not have positions to cover that unless those municipalities want to pay for those services. So Winston-Salem PD has about maybe 600 officers that's responsible for providing law enforcement services within the city of Winston-Salem, and then Kernersville has for their jurisdiction. So I've had conversations with the city manager, city of Winston-Salem manager, asking, for other jurisdictions, again, like Clemens and Louisville, they give us funds because they want law enforcement services from the sheriff's office. I asked him, does the city want to give us money for law enforcement services since the sheriff's office is doing some of that work? His response was no, they've not requested the assistance and they don't need the assistance. That is his response. If we wanted to provide more officers for the city of Winston-Salem, we would essentially be, I know we don't want to talk about taxes, but we have to increase taxes to provide services because city of Winston-Salem residents are supposed to be receiving law enforcement services for enforcement from the city of Winston-Salem. So if we wanted to increase, we would have to increase taxes to basically provide double services. And so I think the question long-term would be more about metro policing, if that's something that the board was interested in doing. I don't know if I answered the question in that way, but we're not providing them with funds for city of Winston-Salem because they have their own police department.
So my question is for the city of Winston-Salem and the council members who are responsible for the city of Winston-Salem. What does that look like in terms of vacancies? It appears that they are, not really securing the safety of the citizens in the city of Winston-Salem, and that's in my district. So I have concerns in Pauls as far as this county is concerned.
I can only tell you what the city manager has relayed.
So I'll definitely kind of put a pin in, whether the police department is doing what they're supposed to do. I don't want to cross open that lane. Maybe there's a conversation that there is between the sheriff and the police department on ways that we can be more supportive with what's going on. Absolutely, in District A, I think we need more, or at least something different than what's going on throughout the county based on what we see with the concentration of crime, especially violent crime. But I do want to look at this slide right here more closely, because it appears that in Forsyth County and maybe Durham and Buncombe, where the sheriff's department is supplying 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 services, whereas in the other ones there is not as many. And so it seems as if the sheriff's budget is more than maybe Mecklenburg or Wake in based on the numbers, but when you're looking at the services provided, they're not provided as many services. Is that the rationale behind why we see in the chart where the sheriff's office has 13% comparison based on the other communities?
What you're talking about the morning. So, I mean, I think the per capita chart is probably a good one to look at. So that's just strictly our expenditure budgets. But per capita might be a good one to see comparison just based on, the amount per population. But you're right, services differ between the jurisdictions. And so I think the fact that, maybe the position comparison to Durham and Buncombe is probably a good comparison to use since we're offering similar services.
The only difference between Wake and Forsyth is animal services. And the animal services is a very small piece of the sheriff's budget. And that, I mean, if you took animal services cost out.
It's about 1.5 million, I think.
I mean, if you went back to that chart and took this where everybody had the X's and took the other things out, it actually is going to be, would you just say 1 point something?
About 1.5, 1.6
So
million.
1.5% of the sheriff's budget is animal services, and that's the only difference between, in that chart, between Forsyth and Wake in terms of services provided. And there's pretty big differences both in per capita and percent budget.
And what I will say is, just for clarity, animal services is countywide, including the city. So we do that for the entire county. SROs we're doing for the entire county, with the exception of Kernersville, does theirs. So that's, and then of course, I mean, we have the JIT team, the Juvenile Investigation Intervention team, that's doing work within the city and county as well. And as the, law enforcement official, at the end of the day, the sheriff can do whatever he wants to do for the county. I think it's just, I want to make sure everybody is clear in that we're not providing deputies specifically for City of Winston-Salem limits because they have a police department. And so if that is something that the board wants to do, then that would require additional funds and increasing taxes on City of Winston-Salem residents who's also paying for that service through the city. The funds through the sheriff's office, while it is for the whole county, is for very specific things, basically the list that Kimberly provided. And for the other municipalities, they're giving us money to provide those services, which is why I asked the city manager, do you want to give us funds to assist with those services within the City of Winston-Salem? And his answer was no.
If we're going to use these stats, we need a true apples-to-apples comparison with at least the peer communities that fit. I mean, Mecklenburg is a creature unto itself. In order to have the sort of complete and accurate apples-to-apples services for matters like the sheriff's office positions, we need to know what specific animal services are included in each of the other counties, Wake and Guilford, that don't list them as divided. The sheriff's department does not handle all our animal services. The sheriff's department only addresses calls regarding strays and dangerous animals, yes. All right, what else does the sheriff's department do?
Enforcement, and then and we do, on the county side, have the animal shelter, but they're doing enforcement.
So, but that's what I'm talking about, enforcement activities, not the shelter, not the adoptions. So how many positions do they dedicate to that? Or
only 1.4% of the budget.
It's $1.4 million.
Okay. Try to get to the point of determining what Wake and Guilford don't do in that area. If their sheriff's department is not handling enforcement, then who is doing it in the county? How many positions does that agency have dedicated to that? And add them in. And we can look at it.
So for Guilford County, I'll let Kyle.
Yeah, so Guilford County, the shelter actually manages enforcement. And so they have non-sworn ACOs who go out and manage that. If there is a need for a law enforcement officer, they call the corresponding jurisdiction. So if it's in the city of Greensboro, they would call Greensboro PD. If it was in the county, they would call the Guilford County Sheriff's Office. And then High Point actually runs their own animal services. But
The last county commission that we need to add in. I mean, this is a decent comparison, but it's not complete because we don't know how many positions are involved in the animal enforcement services within the county.
Well, and what about it's a minor issue, but are we contracting for security work at the courthouse?
Yeah, so.
So we got a check under there for the
Well,
sheriff's office doing court security.
it's the bailiff, so they are responsible for inside the court rooms. That is what we are statutorily required to do, as well as these counties. Where we contract, and I'm not sure about the other counties, is like your front security, screening, and all of that. But statutorily, court security is your bailiffs, and so every county would be doing that.
So my question is, I thought that we had, this is for Kyle, I thought we had the model previously before the sheriff's department came in, that model like Guilford.
yeah, ours was a little bit blended. So we had a model where the enforcement did come out of the animal shelter. However, there were, I believe, 3 sworn deputies, I'm looking anyway from the sheriff's office, who actually reported to the shelter director. Most of the staff were non-sworn ACOs, but they did have a couple sheriff's deputies. So it was kind of a blended model.
And in regardless, no other municipality responded. So there is a resolution from like, I don't know, 1980. Don't quote me on the date, but it's really, really old. It might be even older than that. That essentially says that Forsyth County is responsible for animal control, so enforcement of the whole county. And I think the city gave us like a little bit of funds to build the shelter at the time. And so we basically, in lieu of, or for receiving that small payment for the shelter, we basically said we were gonna do animal control forevermore. Now, I think that's something that we're certainly looking into, what that could look like, but that places a lot of pressure on the sheriff's office for doing that countywide.
I don't want to stay here stuck on it, but I think that we need to have some discussion with the city of Winston-Salem in terms of next steps, what their vacancy rate looks like, how there could be collaborative effort with the city of Winston-Salem and our sheriff's department, but we have to do something, or we're going to continue on this path.
But aren't the crime statistics both for the Winston-Salem PD and for the sheriff's office lower than they like ever been?
The last stats I saw, yes, but we can get updated information. But on violent crimes, the last stats I saw showed.
Yeah, well, we got the sheriff here.
Well, he can certainly, and we do have time for the sheriff's remarks later, but he certainly can answer whatever questions you all would like at any time. Please, thank you.
Yes, so I appreciate you. The crime stats are lower, but that is a result of the model that we have been using and working with the city of Winston-Salem. When you look at the chart, a blood pressure just shot up, and you look at the chart is really flawed because Guilford County, as Kyle explained, is a totally different service provider than what we do here. If you look at Mecklenburg is not a full-service sheriff's office. They just do what's required statutorily. And so when you look at, for example, animal services, we're averaging over 1,000 calls a month. And as Madam Manager said, there was an agreement that you all, not you all, that we made before most of us were here. And as a result of that, 80% of the calls that you are answering on animal services are in the city of Winston. In the city of Winston. This morning on my way over here, we're 60 calls behind because of the volume of calls that are coming inside of the city. So my question is this: if you're allowing us to work animal service calls for animals, why do you have an issue with us providing security inside the city? Did you all see the melee that took place this weekend downtown? When I get calls from businesses, I can't say, well, if you'd like for me to say that, I will, that because of my budget restraints and because of this, my commissioners do not want me providing services in the downtown Winston. When you look at my overtime budget this year, and I love you for your patience that you work with me on, $1 million of overtime where we oversee the budget. We were over budgeted, we were over budgeted day one because we were under budget the day before. 800,000 fact checking was due to medical costs, which like saying I take care of my child. You're supposed to. We're required to take care of the inmates inside the jail. That was medical costs. We were under budgeted on that from the beginning. The animal services, which is another issue, overtime. Sending people to the hospital to sit with the inmates. I'm required by law to do that. We are here because, in your words, we have kicked the can down the road so long that it is a boulder. We can't kick it anymore. We can't. And here I get an email saying, let's freeze hiring. Hiring. How do we do that? If I freeze hiring, that means we will be back in a position of a shortage in the jail, a shortage on the street. We have got to figure out a way to make security a priority in this county. We have been blessed with the technology that you all have funded. I thank you all for that. And had we not had it, we would have some real issues in this county. And if the city, I guess that's a pay grade higher than mine, but the city should be paying us for the services we give them. But I don't have any control over making the city do that. My responsibility is for the safety of this county, which includes the city. If I pull my deputies out of the city and go across the street, send an email out saying, as effective today, we will do nothing in the city, you will see a drastic change in the crime in this county as well as this city. Crime has no respecter of city limits. It does not. It has to be a collaborative effort. And that's all I'm saying. I asked for 3 things this year. That's it. Last year you told me, make your top 3 priorities. And I talked with the madam and I said, ma'am, all I'm asking for is 3 things. I'm not asking for nothing elaborate. I'm asking for things that help sustain the safety of this entire community. And that's all I'm saying. And I appreciate your time, and I appreciate you asking. But it's not a fair chart to compare us with Guilford. I love Roger, but that's like comparing apples and onions. You can't compare the Forsyth County Sheriff's Office to no other sheriff's office in this region. Those are facts. The level of proficiency, the level of response and services that we give are unheard of in this region. And we do it well because we have a collective and collaborative model that we have been following. I appreciate you all's time. Thank you.
One response to the sheriff is my blood pressure is also a little out of whack to the sheriff, and it's exactly for the opposite reason of yours. And if you can direct us of how to get a chart that is aren't apples to onions or apples to apples, if we get an apple to apples chart, I'd love to see that, because I believe we're paying a much higher percentage. There's no question we're paying a higher percentage of our budget. And you could argue our budget overall is not as great as some of the others. That's kind of a different discussion, but it also has to do with wealth in this city. But the point is that I think there are areas where we need to be more cognizant of the dollars that we spend. And an overtime budget, the things that you mentioned about medical, We completely understand. It is unanticipated. I do not view the dollars we pay there as anything relative to your budget. The extra dollars we pay for the help, the staff care, the supervision of your officers at the hospital, that is out of your control. But the rest of it, a lot of it is. And your animal control parts you're giving, that's only 1.4% of your budget. But we need a better apples to apples, and help us get one so we can get a better example of that. And this issue is, I'm trying to decide how to think it. I sort of think we've been doing a lot of work with our volunteer fire departments. And the volunteer fire departments interact with Kernersville, which has a city municipal department, and Winston-Salem, the city municipal department, and Rural Hall has a city municipal department. But obviously, if there's a big fire, then everybody is going to help. See what I'm saying? Everybody's going to help. But they're not, their duties of their daily work is not to be outside of each other's lane. But then they all do have mutual aid. They come and help each other. And I kind of see that arrangement, it looks like it ought to apply to what you do, and what the Winston PD has kind of their lane, you kind of have yours in patrol. But if there is a riot, everybody's there to help out. I mean, it's like it's the mutual aid to help. If there was a huge problem out that happened at some farm someplace, I believe Winston PD do not have jurisdiction out there. I mean, they would help you in any way they could help, I believe. Just as I think you would help in any kind of major, event that occurred. But I think in terms of patrol duties, I think the way it is set up is that the Winston PD is going to patrol the city, and you're going to patrol unincorporated areas. And that's a duty that basically you have as authorized by our budget. And when you start patrolling in the city, you're doing something that's outside of that. And then when we have cost overruns, that creates a problem. So if we're the ones on the hook for the money, how do you suggest that we manage that? We have to try to manage it. So we're basically subsidizing your overages in the budget. We are subsidizing our fund balance to do that. And quite frankly, we're in a little trouble on that. So you being upset about getting a memo on freezing officer hiring for the rest of this fiscal year that my blood pressure's through the roof over that, Sheriff. And you got to understand, we all have to manage our budgets. Everybody has a responsibility to manage budgets. So I'm going to suggest to this board, and I may not get any support, Sheriff, it is up to me. If you overspend your budget by a certain percentage, you lose the positions. Because there's got to be a way to put your budget into balance. If you can't balance it, I believe we can. So you get my drift?
Should I just offer this to Chief without the back and forth? I would suggest that you go back and have a conversation with Chief Ben. Because at the end of the day, as a mother who has lost a child to gun and gang violence in this community, these conversations are for naught, in my opinion. I want families protected in this community, in my district. We're talking about dollars on the table. Do you know how much it costs to bury a child? Do you know how much it costs for the families who lose children or family members to gun and gang, domestic violence, all the things? And we're sitting here at this table talking about apples and onions. I don't understand it. So please, go back and talk to Chief Penn. You guys figure it out. If I need to get over there to the city of Winston-Salem before their board, because he's just the manager, I will do that.
I appreciate you.
Thank you.
But I need to clear up one thing, Dr. Martin. I think there's a misunderstanding. We don't actively ride around patrolling answering call in Winston-Salem. When you see us in Winston-Salem, that's called saturation patrol. That means that the police chief has asked us to assist them. When you see us in downtown Winston, that means mark-ons or somebody, business owner, whether it be the Flows or whoever, has asked for specific assistance inside of downtown Winston. The other piece is that when you talk about you being upset that I'm saying that putting a freeze on hiring, I don't think you understand the ramifications behind me not hiring 20 detention officers that I have in the pipeline that I'm already short across the street. I don't think you understand when you talk about me not managing my budget. I am managing my budget. The problem was I was under budgeted for the 800,000 that was not in there for the health care. The 300 and some thousand in overtime for the animal services was under budget because of agreement that was made 20, 30, 40 years ago. So the money that you give me, I operate within that. So please don't say that I'm out of budget or I'm mismanaging money.
I'm gonna say it all day, Sheriff.
It's not a first thing.
Because essentially, you can't use the argument that your budget, if your budget's your budget, you can't be under budget at the beginning. You can't say you're under budget when you have a budget, just because it's just not what you want.
It's not what I want, it's what I need.
Could I just say, the thing that bothered me most this morning in the conversation was when Chantel tried to talk to the city manager, and he said, we don't want you. Well, if you don't want me, what's it gonna look like if we don't do it? But that should insult the sheriff, and it should insult us. If they do not want to help with crime, there's nothing we can do. And I live in the city, and I will say this, I see more sheriff deputy cars in my area than I do police cars. Very seldom do I see police cars. So I know that we are going overboard with the city not willing to step up to the plate.
And again, what I will, just to clarify, my question to the city manager was, other municipalities provide us with funds to do law enforcement services for them. We are not providing the sheriff with funds for deputies in city limits because they have a police department. Do you want to provide us funds to provide enforcement services? The answer was no. And he stated that because they do not need the assistance, they have a police department. That does not mean they don't help each other. And I think as the chairman said, I think in any jurisdiction, there's mutual aid, something happens, all right, everybody responds. But in terms of day-to-day operations, the answer was that he was not going to provide us with funds because they do not need those services.
So this is far, far more than mutual aid. There you go.
I think, I would like to reiterate what Vice Chair Whitman is saying. This is far more than mutual aid. I think that, the citizens have elected someone who has the level of experience that our sheriff has, and he is trying to explain to us that if we want to have, and I just want to speak simply to this, if you want to have a safe county, these are the things that my department is doing so that we are seeing less than, and we can't even hardly manage the less than. This community is up in an uproar and we have less crime. So imagine if he pulls back because the city manager says, we don't want it. Thank goodness he has more of a moral fortitude to understand just because they don't want it doesn't mean that we don't need it in order to keep the citizens safe. I appreciate even Vice Chair Wisenhunt saying I live in the city. So she is affected too by crime that goes on within the city of Winston-Salem. I live in the heart of District A. And so the numbers that we're talking about in a very simple way have human beings attached to it. And if you don't think those human beings relate to you, that's unfortunate because we are human family. They don't have to be your cousin, your child, in order for this to affect us. So I hope that there is more consideration around what it means to safeguard this community so that also, as we learned in our retreat, it is tied to economic viability, that you cannot attract anybody to Forsyth County with safety issues. I think that was like one of the top 3 or 4 things that most communities could have strong economic mobility around. So I hope that we can you know, get to a point where there is less stress from the county commissioners to, you know, the sheriff's department around what's needed to keep our county safe. Obviously, we don't have, you know, limitless money, but I think that we need to prioritize what it means to be in a safe community.
We'll have more discussions on budgets. Our next follow-up item, and we'll work on other apples to apples. Usually, most counties kind of use the per capita just to see, but the next question was about just like what a tax increase looks like. I think this came from some of our discussions on capital, and there was a question on what this looks like. We're not saying we're recommending it, we're just answering your question.
Yeah. So just countywide, a 1 cent tax increase for a median home value of $269,700 in FY26, and our adopted tax rate of 53.52 was $1,443.43. So if you go up 1 penny to 54.52 and you keep that same tax value, it would be an increase of $26.97 for the year to $1,470.40. And then looking at District A, specifically the median home value, District A $172,300 in FY26. It was a tax bill of $922.15, going up to $54.52 with that same value of $172.3 would increase the tax rate to or the tax bill to $939.38, which is an increase of $17.23, and so that's over over 12 months. And so for the countywide, it's $220 a month, and then District A it's $144 a month. We don't have District B in here, but District B would be $30.52 per year increase. We don't have a slide on that, but that's what it would amount to for District B.
So if someone was paying their tax, let's just say, over 10 or 12 months, what would that be?
So over 12 months, $17.23 would be an extra $1.44 per month over 12 months.
And again, this is just the median home value.
Yes.
Of course, different, values, your house may shift, but when we do comparisons, we try to just use that as the example.
So one of the things that I appreciated from our county attorney, he gave a presentation maybe about a month or so ago, where he talked about the actual values. Although they increase, our tax rate has decreased from. And I think that we need to start talking about that a little bit more, so that individuals, if there is a consensus around the tax increase and the reasons, like our sheriff's department, our schools, the need for that, I think that the constituency really needs to understand that the rate is actually lower than it was previously.
So the rate is lower this year because of our reappraisal. So we were at 67.78 cents. We dropped to 53.52 cents, but that still was a tax increase. It was, I think, 4.48 cents, I believe, above revenue neutral. So there are some communities, like Guilford as an example, the last time they did a reappraisal, they didn't drop theirs at all. And so, right, and people's, the city dropped theirs last year. They decreased it.
I think Greensboro, at the same time, when they had their last reappraisal, they did not. Neither Greensboro or Guilford went over revenue neutral last time.
But isn't the city of Winston-Salem still more than ours?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, their tax rate is still higher, which if you look across the state, typically counties' tax rates are higher, municipalities are a little bit lower, but here the cities is higher than ours.
Well, that's fine, but please know the true story is that most people's property went up. There are some folks, and I know them well, who have property that went up 80%. So please don't ever talk about affordable housing and make that look like that's affordable housing. Because we do not have affordable housing in Winston-Salem, and it's because of our last revow.
yeah, property values across the county, on average, went up 55%. And, you know, most communities across the state saw record-breaking reappraisals just due to what houses were selling. And so the majority of individuals last year, even though our tax rate went down, their bills went up very significantly because of the values. And then this board did do a good job trying to have a reasonable tax rate, but because of the values. This year hopefully will be, again, it's not a reappraisal year, a little bit more normalized, which is why we're using the same home values to show just kind of what a potential increase could be per penny.
Thank you.
The next follow-up item was about property sales. Probably take this one, and then Kimberly and Lee will come up and talk about CIP stuff. But this is a list of pending property sales within the county. You can see the Hall of Justice there, $2.4 million, estimated closing of June 26. Sturmer Park, $3 million, August 26. Tanglewood Business Park, again, the current bid period expires, I guess next Monday is the 13th. So up to 4.9 there, and then Annis Cottage, $2.6 million for a total of $12.96 million.
So I think the question was, like, what do we have pending that could potentially help us if it was something that the board wanted to drop into fund balance to help improve that? This is what we have currently on the books. We know Tanglewood Business Park, it's likely that upset bid may continue even beyond, but right now it's out. Upset bid is continuing and it expires April 13th. We'll see if we get any more offers.
Question where you're talking about your the tax rate made me think, but you may have it further back in your presentation. It's new construction accounts for something, so that's going to be accounted somewhere.
In the property growth, in the tax base growth, it does show up.
You already counted that in your calculation here.
Well, no, this is really just an illustration of what a tax increase would look like. We weren't recommending a tax increase.
The new construction number, that'll be available in
You'll see that in our slides when we talk about our potential tax growth and the dollars that you could get in our fiscal year 27 budget because of that. So yes, you'll see that in our future slides.
Could you tell us for instance, in District A, the highest home value in District A?
We can, we'll get our tax office to pull that.
Okay.
So the highest home.
Yeah.
And where it's located.
Sure.
Okay. Our next follow-up items is, there were a lot of questions about the capital improvement plan, and I think the question really was, what could we do if we did not increase taxes to fund things? And so Lee Plunkett and Kimberly Bussey are going to kind of tag team this particular section.
So I'll take a look at the funding side, financing side, and Kimberly is the expert on the projects themselves, so we'll kind of tag team this. But just as a reminder, the CIP project requests were about $361.9 million, with the split here, county at 115, community college at 114, and the schools at 132. I think we mentioned last time the schools request was significantly higher, and so that's just being evaluated because it was so large. But right now we're using these numbers as what the request is. So we took a look at it, two versions of a no tax rate increase strategy. And so one version, the first one, number one, includes limited obligation bonds or some type of installment financing agreement. So that's in version one. Version two, we said, okay, if we don't have that, don't use that, what does it look like? Both versions do include, we talked about this at the last workshop, about $2.5 million in courthouse project savings and a little bit of interest earnings. That number could go higher depending on what our next arbitrage payment will be, but that's kind of what the number we're using at the moment. So that is included in both versions. And then we did take a look at using the 0.4 cents of capacity. We showed that last time in fiscal 31 and 32 where some debt leveling plan rates rolled off. So we said, what if we applied that to the future debt leveling plan, which increases the capacity, which would allow some maybe for SciTech projects to be funded or pushed to the referendum. So it allows a little bit more funding towards the end of the CIP. So what that does is, again, this is assuming a for sale structure like we did with the 2016 referendum. It pushes it up to about 352 million. And so that's 44 million overall more, because we were looking at 308 last time. But that's about 11 million per sale. So when you're just looking at this CIP and the years it covers, that's $22 million more. And you'll see it on the next slide, or on a future slide. So we kind of took the liberties to say, okay, how do we cover all of our costs with what we have with no tax rate increase? And so again, it's the same concept that we showed you last time. Fiscal 26, the total cost to fund capital-related items are 11.65 cents. And we kept that steady across all years of the CIP. And so you can see starting fiscal 27, the red bar considers what's the existing, essentially debt service, and there's a little bit of money that we send to the schools, the 1.7 million. And so as the debt service is rolling off, we're creating a little bit of capacity to use for future debt service or for cash for future projects. So you can see the green is where the growth comes from old debt service rolling off year after year. And so we try to keep it level at 11.65, and when you looked at the capacity, the green is used for any debt service first, and then the leftover is available for cash for projects. So we kept the number at 26.5 million of limited obligation bonds or installment financing, and that's the jumpstart projects. It gets an infusion of cash up front so that we can start some of these projects that are really needed for the county particularly. But what that does is it decreases the amount of cash available in future years because we have debt service that we have to pay. So there's a little give and take on both sides. It can be sold in multiple tranches. So we have 26.5 million up front. That can be split over multiple years depending on the project needs and how they're come out as far as timing goes. If we do lobs in particularly, that does require a rating. And so we would have to use, if we did it early in the year, we'd have to use the fiscal 25 audited financials, which, as we've discussed, aren't the best when it comes to our rating agency scorecard, at least the way that we see it right now. It does include some fiscal 26 estimates as well, but that's kind of a little bit of the risk of going early. And in future years, in 30 and 32, you do see, like, we can't fully fund the 1.7 to the schools, not by much. It's a very small amount. A little bit of positive change in the per penny would probably wipe that out anyway, but just showing you what the model shows currently. And then kind of based off our conversation last time, we expanded the referendum capacity to kind of possibly backfill it with some community college projects, depending on, again, timing and the projects and how they're determined. So this is a look at just the sources that we have. And so you can see really the main difference is we have the 2.5 million from the courthouse project savings and a little bit of interest earnings. Again, the lobs are still there at 26.5. And then the referendum, you'll see, I think we showed 77 million these 2 years. The last go around, now we're showing 88 million because of the increased capacity. And then the cash unrestricted. So that's, again, what's generated from the roll-off of debt in future years. And so the way we broke that out is, okay, where does that cash go that's available after you pay debt service? So after debt service, what cash is available, where does it go? And if we continue with 1.735 going to the schools, you can see out here in future years, we don't quite have enough cash in those future years to cover that 1.7. And then $0 for any other projects, particularly for the county. And in these years, you get a little bit of a jump here at 2.2 million, but there's not a ton until 2031 where you get another 2 million. So that's just a breakout of the way the cash looks in the total funding chart. And so this is just a comparison. So we showed you the status quo. So the way we normally do it, so 14.8 million in 2/3 bonds, the 1.7 in cash that goes to the schools every year. And then, we've got some airport cash where they use their fund balance to either match grants or to pay for projects. And then they also have some outside grants or some, for some of their projects as well. So you can see we are at 248.8 million. If we did, again, the status quo, and that was creating a $113 million deficit. So if you look at just the version 1, no tax rate increase, and utilizing the $2.5 million from the courthouse savings, that's a additional amount. You've got about $5 million extra in cash that could be used for projects. And then you can see here, we're maxing out our 2/3 bonds. So we talked about that last time, just whatever our capacity is, issue as much as possible so it's not, doesn't have to be voter approved, and we can use those for some capital maintenance style projects. $22 million additional in our GO bond referendum. That was new from last time. And then again, the LOBS amount was 26.5. So in this version, the total deficit right now is at 17.5 million over the 6 years.
I do just want to point out that $2.5 million has been requested by judicial staff for technology for the courthouse. That is not something that we're statutorily required to do, but certainly something that the board can decide. So if you decided you wanted to use those funds, then our deficit would be a little bit higher. So we do need to come to a decision point on that $2.5 million pretty soon. We are still waiting on one thing from them, and that is we've asked for, if it's something that the board even wants to consider, we would need the Office of Administrative Courts to even agree that if we did technology, they would maintain it, replace it, all of that. This is one-time funds. But that, if that is even something the board wants to do, we would need to know that.
I think it didn't make the case to courthouse folks that it would have a greater deleterious effect on the administration of justice to have, if we had to evacuate the detention center because we failed to replace their boiler in entire places.
And just to clarify, 2.3 is really the project savings. There's a little bit of interest included in there right now. There'll be a little bit more interest once we get our final arbitrage payment. The project savings itself is about 2.3 million.
Well, the bad thing about it, we discussed that with them and talked about it, and certainly they've come with an amount. We've been at a standstill waiting to hear from the Administrative Office of the Courts for months. So is there going to be an answer forthcoming from them or not? And I just don't understand how that organization operates. They have statutory duties to do things, the courthouses provide different things. They choose not to provide them. Counties getting this with providing because of people kind of lobbying their, commissioners, et cetera. And that's just not the way to run stuff. And the technology issue, they can't answer. I can even understand maybe they can't replace the technology. I don't feel as bad about buying technology straight up. It's the taking care of it, and it's got to fit all their networks and all their kind of stuff to work. But we've been in this same position for how many months, probably?
It's been a while. I sent another follow-up last week or the week before asking. I will say, while we have had discussions and produced a plan, it's been very clear from the beginning that there's no guarantees. But here's what we even need in order for it to come before the board for a decision, and the AOC's commitment is a large part of that. I know Commissioner Wilson's had some conversations with them as well. But we've been very non-committal, but we've been collaborative in the process of trying to even get to a decision point.
We need a written commitment from the AOC, Mr. Commissioner, and
Why won't they provide?
well, you asked how's that place run. It depends on who the director is at the particular time. I think there's been a verbal commitment that they would maintain it, but I think it's prudent to demand that be provided in writing, and that has been requested, and until we have that, we're stymied. Unless you want to run with a verbal commitment.
I understand it, and I want to do it, but this has gone on for months, and we've had no response in writing. So do we leave $2.5 million sitting waiting until we can get a written response a year from now? Or never get one? I mean, it's just kind of like...
I think it would be helpful to even know from the board, even if we got something in writing from them, is this something that, you know, at least 4 of you want to provide to the courthouse?
I think it's a question of whether we want to provide help. I think it's a question of what are the most critical, urgent capital needs.
Well, it is a critical capital need, respectfully, to have the court rooms and the courthouse functioning with regard especially to criminal dockets.
And why is the AOC not providing that level of support now?
I don't know. I think it's what I indicated earlier. It depends on who you talk to down there at the time. But I think that's just as critical as what we saw over at the detention center as well, where we've got the potential for catastrophic failure.
That's the valid opinion.
I equate them.
But to answer your question, I could probably just get something from AOC, going down the road this far. I would be happy to support that issue, if we can get a commitment that AOC's going to take care of it.
So the key to this version 1 plan, no tax increase plan, I think really is, well, the 2.5 million is included, and the lobs. A lot of you took the tour with us around the county facilities to see those urgent needs in the jail in particular. And so these lobs really do give the county an influx of cash in the first 3 years to be able to take care of some of those critical issues. So in total, it's 103 million in county projects compared to where we were in the status quo at 31 million for the county. So that really helps us take care of some of our deferred maintenance problems. And most of them are funded in this version. So, you know, we talked about the HVAC in the detention facility. We talked about the cell floor project. It's about $6 million, some very large, and that's, you know, I think we're hitting when our inspections some issues with that cell floor issue every time they come to the LEDC to take a look. So there's some projects in the airport that need some attention. You all have seen. We need that generator for Station 9 over at the fire. This really kind of takes care of a large majority of our deferred big ticket maintenance needs in years 27, 28, and 29. So what is not funded? About $6.4 million of referendum requests. So when we moved all of Forsyth Tech projects, or most of them, back to the referendum, there's still a deficit, even given the higher level of referendum that we landed on, the $22 million of additional capacity in that referendum. We're still a little short. So do I think there's maybe some room to have some discussions about Forsyth Tech projects from here? Yes. But just know that that's, and certainly need to have some additional conversations with San Juan Forsyth County Schools as well. But there is a deficit of $6.4 million for referendum in particular, and about $8.5 million in county cash projects. So we had included SciWorks Phase 2 for $3.5 million. That does leave $6.95 in that project that we have to do to be able to have our SciWorks replacement park constructed. $2 million in facility assessments, one for the county and one for the schools, was taken out. Half the proposed solar EV fleet projects have been removed. $1 million for airport projects that were strictly county dollars in later years in 2030 and 2032 have been removed. So those types of things are not funded in this plan, but some of the larger immediate needs for the jail are in the early years.
Question, explain go back slide, please. The SciWorks Phase 2, explain that to me.
I'm happy to say.
Yeah, go
Sure.
ahead.
Others may know it all, but
if
I
you
don't.
recall, our old SciWorks Museum up on Haynesville Road has a land water conservation fund deed restriction on it, and this is a process where we're removing that, moving it to a new piece of property. So there is funding in there to get that process going, to acquire the necessary parcels to move that deed restriction off of it, so the board can feel free to sell SciWorks if that's the will of the board. It just does not fully fund what the entire design of that new, or construction of the new park in future years.
And that is something we are going to have to do in order to comply with the deed restriction. We're just trying to move it, and quite honestly, we don't know how much time that they're gonna give us to do it. It's just, but we're not there yet. We're still waiting on them to even accept our plan.
Well, is it,
And it may come up this fiscal year. I mean, we don't know. We're just trying to show you some of the decision points if we're not able to fully fund the plan.
well, are you still in the works to, trying to get the, federal government authority to release that?
We are, and we've reached out to our representation in the federal government to reach out to the National Park Service. So it's before them. We're waiting for them to make a decision.
So doing that provides an opportunity to sell sidewalks.
Right.
And sidewalks I think could be a fairly nice revenue producer. And so to not have the money to make that happen is also losing money and not selling any Bill sidewalks, which also would increase tax base in the county for the future years in addition to the one-time sale and provide employment opportunities. I mean, that should be once we get the go-ahead, that's one thing we talked to our legislators specifically about, and I think the letters are literally there. If we got that may get responded to. If we got that responded to in the next few months, we ought to be prepared to execute whatever we need to do to make that happen so we can put that up for sale. And I hate to see that be somehow delayed.
So I will just mention there is about $7 million in this plan to fund acquisition of property and some design, get that project going.
And some trail construction, I believe.
And
It's,
some trail
yeah.
So there's some funds for it.
I believe you can hold off on the trail construction side, simply get what has to be done to get the property.
I think that's the question, right?
Well,
Yeah.
so as part of the conversion, there will be an acquisition, but also some sort of development. That's what the federal government requires as well.
Right.
This will get us going, and then we'll have a determination from the federal government exactly what we need to do.
The element could be a half-a-mile trail versus 6 or 8.
National Tree Trail versus the Bay Trail.
Yeah.
So it could be a whole bunch of.
There are still some unknowns. What we do know is that we're going to have to acquire replacement property. And so this provides the funding to be able to do that in the first step.
Do you know what the tax value was on that again?
On the sidewalks property?
We could probably get that. I don't have it.
Around 5 million, something like that.
That sounds about right.
Kirby says 8.
8 million?
I want to say it's around 8.
8 million.
All right, so there's version 1. Again, this is, we can continue working, but this is trying to get a scenario for what happens if there's no tax increase. How do we still address some of the pressing county projects? Okay.
So this is version 2 of the no tax rate increase strategy. Again, the only difference is we're removing the limited obligation bonds installment financing agreement from the conversation. So we're taking that out. And so what it does increase some cash available because we're not having to pay debt service on that. But there's just less overall funding for projects. So again, same chart we saw before. And you'll notice your cash line is much higher than it was before, to the tune of $27.7 million. But again, the limited obligation bonds were not funding in this initial year. And so when you see the breakout of that cash line, you'll see the schools fully funded at 1.7 every year, and then some additional cash available each year for probably county projects because we have a lot of smaller projects that don't really make sense to be financed with long-term debt. So the cash is really helpful for those projects. So about $17.3 million of that goes to county projects. Again, if you just compare it to status quo like we did the other plan, the cash obviously is a lot higher at $17.3 million. Same with the project savings from the courthouse and a little bit of interest earnings. 2/3 bonds, maxing that out, $22 million in referendum, but nothing in the limited obligation bond installment financing. So the deficit grows to about 31.8 million with this structure.
Yeah, so what does that mean? What's funded, what's not funded? We talked about those, these sort of critical projects that need to be done pretty quickly. This project, unfortunately, pushes those out for about 3 or 4 years, which is a risk, if possible at all. And the warehouse project that a lot of you all saw, something has to happen there, but that really cuts it down by half. So not the best of the two options, but you know, again, there's some risk for bill off, I think, going out for that, but some additional dollars, I would say, from 30 million in the status quo up to 90 million for county, but still does not quite hit the mark for some of our really critical projects. So what is not funded? Significantly more items for the county. Some EMS renovations, Annex 1 building renovation. This is just sort of picking and choosing what could not, would not fit in these projects. So again, about 24.3 million, a lot of them deferred maintenance that would not happen with this program.
And the reason we kind of showed you version 1, version 2 is if we did the limited obligation bonds, we have to go to the bond market for that. And there's a risk for us doing that, and we'll talk more about that. Now, what I will say is, based on information that they told our financial advisor, whether we go out to market or not, they are likely to review our rating anyways. This would just potentially push it up. But we need that cash up front in order to be able to address some of these critical items. But that's why we're showing you both versions, because that's a decision point. And then Lee will tell you.
To piggyback on that, there is some, we can go straight to a bank to try to get financing. It's just more expensive instead of going competitively to the market. So we wouldn't get rated, but it just costs more, which makes sense because we're just.
Where you can sell it at a lower rating, this small sale, and pay a little more interest, which is still less than the words of the bank.
Probably, yes. Yep.
That's what that goes.
Yep. So this is, we're going to compare all the plans. So just a reminder, this was the 1 cent and how it looked, and kind of see how the green section is a little bit larger because we're adding this cent in there for the capacity, and where we took the 0.4 cents, we dropped down, in the versions that we saw into the debt leveling plans. And so again, just a comparison. So status quo, we're at 113.1 million roughly in a deficit. With the 1 cent strategy, we were able to fully fund, so no deficit. And then we look at the version 1 versus version 2. Essentially, the LOBS allows us to get to about a $17.5 million deficit. And then in version 2, without the LOBS, more cash, is about a $31.8 million deficit. So just the comparison from all the plans that you have seen, the last workshop to this workshop. I think that's it. Any questions?
But what would be, does it require, I'm maybe not reading that correctly, but I was trying to think if you went to a half a cent to a cent, it's going to take a full cent in order to have that 0 on the total deficit?
No, you're on the right track, because what we've got here is we've got additional capacity in the referendum, so that's providing a significant boost to these two versions.
Yep.
So if you drop that boost into the 1 cent version that you've already seen, then yes, I do believe that 1 cent could be dropped lower than what to fully fund the plan. So we can definitely run that and see what that scenario looks like.
A number worth knowing.
Yep.
So that was to try to answer the question from the last budget workshop. What could we do if we did no increase? What could we fund? And so, again, a lot of things we can for version 1, but we would have some challenges kind of in future years, but it also gives us time to figure out what future years look like. So, but we'll run also the half cent kind of what we talked about. I mean, there's a lot of different modeling kinds of things that can be done. All right, the next item, so that was it for the budget workshop follow-up questions that the board had. And then the last thing I have, just kind of as a follow-up, was during the board retreat, there were 3 priority areas that the board essentially stated that you wanted us to make sure I focused on for fiscal year 27. Behind your packets, there's like a little one-sheeter. It's underneath your PowerPoint presentation. So this is just a summary of what we discussed. The highlights is that basically what we heard from you in order is that your #1 priority was fund balance sustainability and maintaining our AAA bond. You stated within 3 years. You're going to hear from Terry in a bit on why 3 years is going to be a challenge, but she will show you that. We also, your #2 priority was addressing the capital needs, and then followed by providing efficient, equitable, and capable emergency services to Forsyth County. That's what we heard from you based on the DOT exercise. This kind of breaks down behind it the other items that you rated, but you will see throughout the kind of manager's recommended budget, we're going to try to focus on these 3 areas. You will see that through our budget development process. I think it would be helpful at some point for us to maybe adopt this, maybe at a future meeting for the board. I think also as we go out to our bond rating agencies, I think it would be helpful for them to see that this is a top priority for the board. Obviously, how we address it is one thing, but at least to state it in writing that this is your #1, I certainly think it can only help and not hurt.
I'd like to say something about the fund balance. I've been asking a manager for 2 or 3 weeks about the fund balance. I'd go in one day and after the meeting and ask her something, and I couldn't get an answer. So I had to think of a better way. So I go in again and I ask questions. She just went around and still wouldn't give me an answer. So I believe it was last week, I stopped by again, asking questions about the fund balance. I'm pretty sure you got a plan, but she still wouldn't give me information. So don't take that in a bad way. I guess she said, well, I got it ready. She probably already had it ready, but she must have didn't want to release it to me or one of us solely, all of it at one time, all of us at one time. So I guess this is part of it.
So Terry today in a few slides is going to talk about fund balance. So the reason I couldn't answer your question is because we were still literally last week working on what this could potentially look like. Again, the board is saying you want to address this in 3 years. I think you're going to see that is really impossible. And so we don't have a plan for 3 years. And so I was not able to fully answer your question, but Terry's going to show that today.
Well, the bottom line of that to me is, along with, I think, other commissioners, that the fund balance situation is important, and it might even play a role in the overall budget of what we may or may not do. So I knew you didn't have a whole plan ready, that you had a partial plan anyway. I knew that. Just didn't know what it was. I was trying to get an idea.
It's a challenge, for sure. So we will talk, that's the next few slides. I don't know if you want to have a break before we go into fiscal year 26 year end.
I think it's a good idea. Why don't we take a break? Can't do anything less than probably 15 minutes. Okay. 15-minute break.
Okay. Where are we? Okay, so the next section that we have to talk about is a fiscal year 26 year-end update. Before I do that, I do just want to clarify, because there were discussions during the break. I do just want to clarify, for the city manager's purposes, I think they would love probably for the sheriff's office to help for free. Our conversation has been around funding. Do you want to pay for it, and do you need the services? So I think they would be happy to receive services for free. So I just want to clarify, I don't want it to say they don't want services. I think they would love any and all help at no cost. So just clarity before we move on. This slide I thought was just helpful before we begin talking about our fiscal year 26 year-end estimates, to remind the board about our requirements under the Local Government Budget and Fiscal Control Act. I know you all know I take this very seriously, that we have to have a balanced budget. That is a requirement, and that departments cannot exceed their approved budgets. The board provides an approved budget for each department. Departments are required to stay within that budget unless the board amends the budget. And where we are this year, as you will see, in order to amend it, that would essentially require going into fund balance, and you're going to hear from Terry why fund balance really is not an option unless that's something that the board wants to do. This act also establishes accountability and transparency of the use of public funds. It requires ongoing budget monitoring and amendments. It does limit unauthorized spending, enforces fiscal discipline, and then violations can result in audit findings and corrective action. And so if anything goes over budget, that can be an audit finding, and that audit finding is on the county. The board is responsible for that. So I do just want to, again, I wanted to preface that while I know that things impact people, at the end of the day, as the county manager, I am responsible for a balanced budget. This board oversees that process, and it is governed. In absence of that, just like the schools, we could have audit findings and other deficiencies. And so I just want to make sure we're clear when we're talking about numbers, why it is important to us on the staff side, because we're statutorily required. With that, Kyle Wolf is going to kick us off on our fiscal year 26 year-end estimates.
So, good morning again, commissioners. And so, as a just a high-level look at where we are, we showed you this in March, and so here we are a couple weeks later to show where we are. And unfortunately, it's gotten worse. So we're now showing we are now projecting that we will use $5.5 million of fund balance at the end of 26. It's really, it's driven some by expenditures, but a lot by on the revenue side, specifically on sales taxes, and we'll go through, I'll show you here in a second where that is. And so again, revenues estimated to be 572 compared to our 591 budget. This number didn't change at all because it's based on what was actually billed and based on our collection rate from the prior year. But again, the sales tax estimate is at just like less than 105 million compared to our $110.8 million budget. Through January, so we, if you remember from March, like through November, we were really right on track. December, we actually had one of the greatest collection months that we've ever had, but we also had, I think it was the second highest refund month that we ever had. And so that took a hit. January was not much, was actually not better at all. So we have not gotten refund data for January yet, but that's my anticipation is that we had another significant refund month in January, which is really, hitting where we are actual. So the year-to-date budget is based on benchmarks of, where we would anticipate being through the month of January. And so you can see we are $3 million below our benchmark in Article 39, which is a 1 cent, it's 1 cent of the sales tax. And then we're slightly, we're closer to making budget on 40 and 42, which are half cents. On Article 46, we are still to the good by $258,000, where we, again, based on that January benchmark. So that's where we are on sales taxes through January. We will get we'll get refund numbers possibly this Friday, more than likely by next Monday. It's usually around the 12th of the month, and so it may be Friday, which will be the 10th of April, but it may be Monday on the 13th, where we actually will see whether January's numbers were refund based or if it was just a significant slowdown in spending by consumers. Okay, yeah, so again, I just kind of said that, all of this really on that previous slide, so it was even more disappointing. I will say, as part of that House Select Committee on Property Tax Reduction and Reform, there are some bills that will be, that were proposed at their March 18th meeting that they're going to, I believe, look at in their April meeting, including some limitations on sales tax refunds for hospitals and nonprofit hospitals. And so, obviously, when we look at refunds in our area, a lot of them are based on our hospitals. And so that I just kind of highlight that to say that it's kind of a catch-22. It's a good thing. It could be a good thing for the county on sales tax refunds if those are minimized, but also there could be a push by the hospitals to get more of those refunds issued. So that's a concern. In terms of revenues, you can see where we are as a percentage of budget, where we estimate to be. So we are significantly below on the taxes, and that's really totally by sales taxes. I'll show you on the next slide. There's a breakdown of what those revenue line items look like in taxes. And then where we anticipate being, on a higher object level on a revenue basis, so 93.2% of budget. And so again, on the taxes side, so on the property taxes, we anticipate being, this is typically where we are, 101% of property taxes, but sales taxes are really where we are struggling right now, which we'll drive for next year. Again, on a line-by-line basis, on the expenditure side, you can see where we are at. One thing I'll say on this capital line, we're showing 104%. There's, we think that's something just in our system. We will not go over budget on capital. It's just, we need to scrub that. But this estimate of 6.439, number a little bit more, we think we may have something entered, either dually entered, like on an encumbrance and an actual. So this will not be above, we will keep this below that 100% line. It will probably be more in line with the around 90%, 85%, 90% probably. And then department by department, you saw this in April as well. And so again, most departments are, against that under that 100% level. We still do have some concerns on the sheriff's side, which he addressed a little bit today. And then as you go through, the ones that are 100% are really like the debt service, the college, the school system, our city county departments like inspections and planning and purchasing, emergency management are really kind of estimated at 100%. They likely will not be at that full 100% when we do a fourth quarter true up. It'll be lower, but where we are currently, that's where they are projecting to be out. And kind of go through, and again, you can see where our expenditures are estimated to be at 94.5% of expenditures.
Cal, may I go back to the year-end estimate revenues?
Yes.
You discussed the impacts on sales taxes of the about $5 million under on the taxes. Intergovernmental, please remind me of what that $12 million
Sure. So
That's over 2/3 of the variance.
it's a significant number. Most of our intergovernmental revenue is like our DSS, our public health. There's some intergovernmental revenue in the sheriff's office and emergency services, but a lot of times on the intergovernmental side, it's a reimbursement type basis deal. So if revenues are down, we would anticipate seeing the expenditures down in those significant departments like DSS and public health.
Can we break out where we were providing the same service and we were getting less paid by either the state or the federal government, and where that came in?
Sure.
I mean, just in terms of our understanding of what's causing the underage in our revenues for the year, that would be helpful.
Absolutely. So intergovernmental, I mean, I'm sure you remember, I think last year we talked about intergovernmental a lot as well. We are doing some right sizing. And you'll see it when we talk about FY27 as well. We are doing some right sizing on the revenue side, whereas in prior years, we might have budgeted 100% of what we thought we were going to get for public health, and then never got anywhere near spending that much. And so we are making some adjustments in the 27 budget. There's been, in prior years, we've come back to the board to amend the budget multiple times to appropriate more revenue and expenditures for public health and DSS. And this year, we have done that a lot less because of how far we've been under on intergovernmental in the past. And so we are trying to right-size
And
that.
just to reiterate, so the revenue is estimated at 39, the expenditures would be about 39 as well. But we'll try to dig into that and break it out a little bit more. Intergovernmental is just really kind of one of those challenging things because it is based on the reimbursement we get, the services that we're providing. So we've been working hard on right-sizing what that budget looks like.
But I know you've got a lot of times you have staff positions filled to the level of anticipating you're going to have this level of activity. And if we're getting that much less revenue, what's that going to do to our staffing level at DSS and health departments? We're going to be losing people who we may need because
You should then see that on the salary savings because we will hold positions and not fill them.
Okay, thank you.
We'll dig into that.
Could you go back to slide 35? I want to make sure I understand something. On 35, under the first column of the FY26 adopted budget, it actually shows in our adopted budget, we had intended and planned to spend $9.7 million of fund balance.
Yes.
Your projected estimate at the end of the year is 5.4, so we actually have improved that.
That's correct.
By $4 million, requiring $4 million less. You said when you went over the slide that things have gotten worse. Have they gotten worse since the last time we saw a slide like this?
In the March budget workshop, the fund balance change was $2.9 million.
Getting better, and now it's back.
And so now we're at 5.5, and it's really driven by the sales taxes.
And again, just to reiterate, you are correct. I mean, we budgeted 9.7 million fund balance usage, and that was primarily for the debt leveling plan. That amended had a lot to do with some of the things that we did with the schools, but again, we didn't really plan on using fund balance, which is why we're at about 5.4. So we are within budget. We're not over budget in that regard. However, we are trying to still do what we can to minimize the 5.4, and that has everything to do with the fund balance conversation and the AAA bond things. But we are within budget. It's just, we do want to try to minimize that, and we'll talk more about that.
Thanks.
You'll probably talk about, on page 43, have we gotten in there?
Oh, where were we?
Number 38.
Oh, 38?
Before you get to 43. significant refunds suspected. Can you give me more context for that?
When our sales tax report comes in, usually again, like around the 12th of the month, it will tell us, what the total collection number was, how that was distributed between the county, between the municipalities. And it will also tell us, it will say, you had $15 million of sales tax collections, but then there were, a bunch of refunds of sales tax refunds. So organizations like the hospital, who are nonprofit and are able to claim an exemption there. And so they can claim a sales tax refund, and it basically gets reduced from our distribution of sales tax collection. And so it's typically been, over the years, anywhere from like 9 to 12, 13% of our collections are refunds. We've been low through we were low through the first 6 months or so, or through the first 5 months, and then through December, it went up. And again, I would anticipate that this month, we are very much on a normalized refund. So on the optimistic side of me, which is a very small part of me, I'm very much on the pessimistic side, but the optimistic side of me says, okay, well, our sales tax numbers are normalized. We still have 5 more months of sales tax collections that will come in, even though we're in April, it comes in a couple months behind. We still have 5 months for the year. If they're normalized, maybe we'll be okay. But again, I'm much more of a pessimistic guy, and so that's why the sales tax.
So do you project that the hospitals, for example, which I would assume are the largest nonprofits,
That's right,
that seek refunds?
It's a lot of it is usually is Baptist. It's Navat. The schools are part of it. I mean, we are part of it. I mean, I don't think we do very much at all, but I think we are. But what I can remember, and also churches. Churches can claim those sales tax refunds as well.
Do we still have a commissioner sitting on the Navat board? It's not a commissioner, it's,
We haven't.
you appointed someone.
Are they reporting back to us with regards to how Vermont's feeling about property tax reduction in the state?
There's been a conversation about that. Yeah, I mean, that I'm aware of.
Do they report back to us?
I have
He'd be
not.
happy to come anytime.
Yeah, I mean, we could have them do an update from this perspective.
It's already working. Oh, you did. It would be nice if you guys could report out to the remainder of us what's happening. So that would be nice. Thank you.
If we get a number on the refunds from each nonprofit, I don't want to single out per se. Well, I want to say category, not each one per se, but like churches, how good they are.
We can request a report. We have to request it, and so I can draft up a letter. Actually, the chairman has to sign it and request it, and we can get that for you, for sure. Did you have a question on 43?
I did. So with the Winston and Forsyth County Schools, since we have Dr. Phelps, he has not, in my thoughts, presented before us with any updates. I appreciate your updates to him, but is he scheduled to come
so
to us?
he's coming this month. The only reason he hasn't come yet is because they do quarterly. And Dr. Moore, when she was here, kind of did the last one, like y'all allowed her to kind of get the third quarter done early to allow him time to get settled. So he's scheduled for April 16th.
April 16th. Thank you.
Let's see. And so again, we are projecting to be at 94.5% on expenditures. And now Terry will come up and talk about the fund balance issue.
So we've already jumped into this one a little bit. As you saw, we did, in the adopted budget, appropriate $9.7 million in fund balance, and that was primarily for the debt leveling reserves. Our expectation at the time was that if revenues come in close to 100%, which historically they have done, and we held expenditures in the 95 to 96% range, we would generate enough surplus to cover that initial appropriation of fund balance. And what we're seeing is revenues are well below that. So in fact, that's where we come to where we actually are estimating at this point, actually utilizing some fund balance. This just for a little bit of historical perspective. The numbers you see in the projected 26 really should match what Kyle has shown you, but just trying to show you over time what we're talking about when we say, revenues usually are right around that 100%, or excuse me, down here, usually around 100%, and right now we're projecting 97.7. Expenditures really are holding the line. They're where we would want to see them. And we pointed out really the two that are driving it is the sales tax and intergovernmental. So actions that we can take, and some that the manager has already recommended and put into motion to try and minimize the effect or the impact on fiscal year 26 fund balance, is to freeze hiring for the remainder of this fiscal year, except critical positions that county management will review and approve on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, I'll interject on that. So I did, because it is the board's #1 priority to really try to get our fund balance in order, and because our revenues are projecting to be lower this fiscal year, I did inform all of our department and office leaders on Friday that we are going to institute a hiring for positions, except critical positions. So if there are things that need to be filled, they'll talk to me, Kyle and Denise. We certainly want to be reasonable, and we don't want to negatively impact operations, but we also need to make sure we're able to stay within our budget. And so that is something we also had to do last year. And so we will, that's in order to stay within our budget, and if the board wants to try to make sure our fund balance is in decent shape, specifically as we go out to bond, that is something that we are prepared to do. But we will work with departments on a case-by-case basis.
So that's specific to the sheriff's department, because I heard from our sheriff today regarding the hiring freeze, and his positions are critical.
I spoke with him this morning, and I have committed to working with him on that.
Yeah, and the goal of all of this is to minimize the impact on current year fund balance, to reduce as much as possible the projected reduction, because we've received the communication, which we've shared with you, of Moody's concerns about our fund balance position coming out of 25. Obviously, any further reduction does not help our cause with the rating agency. A couple other things, requested departments to review their budgets for the remainder of the year and to forego or defer any expenditures that they feel that they can eliminate. And then if we can close on the Hall of Justice, request the board that we retain those funds in the general fund to help support fund balance. So a lot of numbers, a lot of moving pieces. I thought that got changed to 5.5 million.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. That should be 5.5 million. These got updated probably within 30 minutes of them going to Ashley to be distributed, so I apologize that we missed that one. But if we actually do reduce fund balance coming out of 26, our fund balance ratio, just looking at the general fund, it was 26.9 at the end of fiscal 25. Then we're dropping in the 24.6, 24.9 range over here. If we add sale of the Hall of Justice, it does help a little bit, but we still put ourselves in a really, really precarious position.
And just a reminder, we need to be 35%.
35 is the target, right?
That's the target.
Right. And really looking at it, we really need about a $4.5 million surplus coming out of this year just to maintain where we were at the end of fiscal 25, which was, again, not a warm and fuzzy place to be, putting it in clear financial terms. So coming out of the board retreat, you did identify your #1 priority was to improve fund balance by fiscal 29 and maintain the Moody's AAA. And fund balance can be improved only by generating surpluses each year, your revenues exceeding your expenditures. And with the prospect of fiscal '25 likely not improving fund balance, I think our best course is to show a real demonstrative effort in our '27 budget to show that we're taking the steps needed to rebuild fund balance. And I use the phrase there in an effort to dissuade, because I can't really tell you that'll do it, but it'll at least demonstrate to them that this is our number one priority, and here are the actual concrete steps we're taking to achieve that priority. And a commitment to continue those remedial actions through fiscal '29 in order to meet your goal by '29. So what might those remedial actions look like? And again, there are a lot of estimates in these projections year to year as things rolls forward. We don't know exactly how things will play out, but in a general ballpark basis, if we can retain the nearly $13 million in anticipated proceeds from the sale of assets, the list that you saw earlier in today's workshop, maintain our expenditure growth of about 1.5% per year. Right now, Kyle's estimates have us at about a 1.7% over fiscal '25. And then increase revenue over the next 3 years by approximately an additional $23 to $26 million over the revenue that would be generated from the natural growth that is out there. Because in the end, you need to generate almost somewhere in the ballpark of $90 million in surpluses over that 3-year span to get your fund balance high enough so that when laid over revenues, you approach that 35%. And again, that's in the range of a AAA. It's a steep hill.
So we wanted to answer your question on what it would take for 3 years. This is what it would take.
May I ask, what is your latest projection of revenue that will be generated per penny on the tax rate?
It's a little over $6.5 million. In '26, it was $6,525,023. Based on the April 1st estimate, it is $6,592,980. So an increase of about 70 grand.
And we'll get one more estimate before the final budget, but we're not expecting drastic movement.
So, in order to increase revenue by that amount, it would require us to add about 4 plus fraction cents on the tax rate. Each year? Each year, or just?
Yeah. Yeah, it's another $23 million in fiscal '28 on top of where we ended '27.
Right.
Yeah.
But we've heard the discussion from our bond counsel about an advisor, bond advisor, the proper name. That we don't have to get to 35. We have to show progress and steady progress. I did the last session we had. I just did some back and envelope. I'm kind of look at those numbers. You could have a goal of doing this over 10 years. You could have a goal, and we could get an opinion on that. If we establish a goal, that we'll get this to over 10 years. This is how we're going to do it. This is how we will assure that we get there. And I think they'd probably say, sounds good. May not, but in my view, if they say that, if that doesn't get it, then I'd say go to the, whatever it is, the A equivalent, go to the next level down, whatever it is.
But I think the priority was to try and get there in 3 years, and so this is what we were looking at. And again, with all the caveats, and it moves us toward that range, but there's no guarantee that, because we already are below, and they're using other factors to keep us at AAA, how they'll view any deterioration or not significant improvement.
But our advisor advises they look at trends. Trends are big important. I'm not sure you have to do it accelerated in 3 years, but that'd be another question that can be asked.
Yeah, I mean, again, we put this down because this is what we heard from you. I think we just wanted to show this is almost impossible to do. And so we certainly can, at the end of the day, we know we have to show improvement. Quite honestly, probably over 10 years, we will lose it before then. We are not competitive with the other AAA bond counties. They are over 50%, we're at low 20s. But we know at a minimum, for North Carolina,
And they're not all over 50 for North Carolina. We had a talk, I think, on that last.
Yes, well, what I will say is it was Mecklenburg, Wake, Durham. Guilford is not, but they are over us, although I think they're steadily declining. At the end of the day, we don't know what they're going to do. We do know that this is something, though, that we have to control, and at a minimum, we need to show improvement at a minimum. And so it's really a board policy decision on what sort of improvement do you want to show. And so on the staff side, what we're saying is, at least the property sales will help. We can make a concerted effort on that. We're going to try to minimize the impact this fiscal year, because anything we do this fiscal year is going to negatively impact next fiscal year, which is why I'm implementing kind of the hiring freezes, except for critical positions. We'll look at expenditures some more. I mean, these are all just things to help. And then as we go into the fiscal year 27 budget process, we'll just see what we can do to control expenditures as best we can, understanding that there are already budgetary pressures that we'll talk about on our benefits and revenue side, and just a lot of things that cost shifts from the state to us on DSS and fuel. There's just a lot of things that we're up against.
Can I just
Use,
say,
sales of property that's in the works to use for fund balance, that would be a way, to me, you put that in fund balance or add it to it, and because we're going to have fund balance as we go along, it would not be spending that, whatever we get on property sale for something else. So it seems to me the only other, as far as increase in revenues, the only thing that we have control over, the county, is the property tax. And then whatever new construction is, that's controlled by the market, not us. Not maybe a little bit with mostly the market, and then whatever sales tax that might be more, and that's just within the market itself. So is there anything else that I've missed that we have control over, or raising money other than the property tax? Or what other things has the staff thought of?
On the revenue side, that is really the only thing that we control. There are some charges for services, but it really is a fairly small percentage of the budget. It's not going to move the needle.
Well, some of those things that you mentioned that maybe you'd try to not spend as much on, we've seen how hard that is not to
Yeah, because we're already, we're already trying to maintain there, which is below the rate of inflation as it is. So, I mean, I think we're fairly constrained on the expenditure side. And keep in mind, while the property sales will help dig us out of the hole, unless we have the revenue that is keeping up with that expenditure growth, then we don't ever make permanent progress. We're right back in.
That's true, but use expert budget. I don't pretend to be that, but as I see it, we're at a low level on fund balance. Well, if you put minimal levels of money in it, we're trying to get it built up back to a level where it was. Well, if you were building it up and you put 5 million, 4.5, I believe it is, for the Hall of Justice, then if we keep trying to get the level back up, well, that 4.5 we put in is gonna stay there because we're gonna try to keep building. And until we get to a point that we might do something like this, or less likely because we'll be watching it. But if we took that and just put it,
And you're,
it didn't, well, we have talked about property sales, putting it in something else, but right now it looks like to me that would be one of the best things to put in, add to the fund balance.
And if you remember the last workshop where we showed the growth in expenditures, growth in revenue, that until we get those on par, then we continue to create the scenario where we're going to use fund balance. So yeah, we need to generate surpluses, property sales, and other things to help get us back where we need to be, but then going forward, we want those to be aligned. And so that's why we're really looking at revenue growth as being what is needed to try and solve this puzzle. In terms of trends, if we don't add to fund balance this year, and my early estimate is about $4.5 million, our ratio will go down again coming out of 26. So that's 3 years in a row that our ratio has declined. And that's where I say, unless they see some real demonstrative actions taken in 27 that are going to create surpluses, I think they've seen the trend that will move the needle for them. And again, I can't speak for them, but.
And just a reminder, I mean, the reason that we are in this place, just to kind of echo Terry on revenues and expenditures need to match. Previously, when we've had, like years past, where we've had expenditures that were a little bit higher, not that they were egregious, but they were just a little bit higher, we appropriated fund balance instead of actually increasing revenue to where it needs to be. And by doing that, we've continued to deplete our fund balance. So last year, we made sure that we did not appropriate fund balance except for debt leveling that was planned, and really made sure we matched revenue with expenditures. And at a minimum, we need to continue that practice. And then in addition, we've got to figure out a way to grow it. In the past, sometimes your revenue when sales tax is good, because it's just so unknown, right? Sales tax next year could be fantastic, even though we're not planning for it. And if that happens, then that'll help us with surplus. But it looks like we're going to miss our sales tax budget 3 years in a row. So this year, we're going to be looking at what do we realistically need to be budgeting for sales tax.
There's something that I would love, and I'm probably the only commissioner who wants to see this, but we have mandates from federal government and mandates from state government. Most of them are not funded. But what do we do as a board that is not required by federal or state? And if it's possible, I would like to see that list.
So we showed high level at the board retreat, like what was in those quadrants, what was statutorily required and not, and we can do, maybe get you like a spreadsheet of sorts or some sort of document detailing what that is.
Okay, well, this is the second year that we're gonna ask all departments to look at their budgets and reduce them. And if I recall, last year they came up with $7 million. Well, it's about time for us to do the same thing that we're asking departments to do.
And I'll just piggyback on that as well. So not to micromanage, but I would like to see how you propose those departments to provide you the information that you need with regards to the hiring and suggested list about revenue from the different departments. Does that make sense? So for example, I need to know where you're cutting, what departments you're cutting, or asking to pull back.
I've asked all departments to look at their budgets, like as opposed to me going in their budget and saying, hey, I'm gonna cut X, Y, and Z. I've asked them all to look within their budget, to freeze positions. If they need an exception, to send that to us. And so then we can say, okay, yes, no, and then to also look within their budgets for if there's other expenditures that can be held through the end of the fiscal year.
So you will be getting a listing of that, right?
We're hoping to get that from departments. And again, we just sent that to them on Thursday.
So I just wanted to see like what the reduction would look like, or what they're proposing.
We do not have that yet. We just asked them to go in. I mean, at this point, if I'm being honest, it's a little more, it's symbolic. Like, it's to show that we are trying to do something to improve. So anything will be helpful in order to maintain your number one board priority to minimize the amount of fund balance used.
Yeah, but I think I just heard Commissioner Whisenhunt say that we had a cost savings from the departments of what, 7 million? 7 million, right?
That was last year. This year, it's a completely new year. We didn't take that away from them this year. We restored, and then this is brand new. So it's not, if we get $1 million, $2 million, all it's doing is, which is helpful, it's going to reduce the amount of fund balance used so that we can show improvement.
I apologize for asking this stupidly simple question, but I may have misunderstood the target here. At the end of 3 years, you're saying that in order to stay in the range, or get into the range for the AAA, over natural growth, do we need 23 to 26 million more dollars, or do we need 69 to 78 million more dollars at the end of 3 years?
We need that much each year. So on top of the natural growth. The change in revenue from 27 to 28 will need to be in that $23 million
So that's
range.
you're talking about 3.5 to 4 cents additional on the property tax rate each
4.7.
year.
And if you paid it off in 5 years, it's 2.8. If you did it in 10 years, it's 1.4 to get that. But let me ask this question. If you sell more bonds, let's assume that the school district has a no tax increase bond issue with the amount of capacity that's generated. That money is the interest is going to be paid off at different rates. It'll restructure our whole payment plan, even though the amount of money, I think, is the same. That's going to change our fund balance amounts, is it not?
Make the connection again?
I'm saying that when you sell bonds, part of what's in our fund balance is about 147 million. Within that are the money that's reserved to actually pay off debt. There's debt money included in that.
Right.
There's reflected and paying off accumulated, and we level because we don't want to be adjusting the tax rate up and down, up and down, up and down. So in certain given years, there's more surplus left over, and as the debt begins to pay down with principal, that begins to balance changes. All that changes. So I'm saying that with some, even just what we talked about, some small debts plus this, what the school district will do with a larger kind of number, how does that change our fund balance without doing anything?
If there's no tax rate increase?
Probably, I guess if there's no tax rate, probably none. That maybe, I'm not sure about that, because the payments are different. The payment structure will be different.
Yeah. I haven't factored in any additional debt payments in the out years because they won't begin before 29. They'll begin after 29 on any
That is
referendum
correct.
debt.
It will be after 29.
So
But
that's not
after
in this one.
29 is important. I mean, in terms of.
Yes, it may push the
structure.
1.5 higher.
I'm not talking about.
Our expenditures could go up because we'd have additional debt service.
So you're discounting, what's, that 1.5%, I was just going to ask county manager, that's 8.6 million roughly in this year's budget, from our budget. That's going to cover potentially increased debt service and cover all increases in our budget on that's 8.6 million.
We're still scrubbing. I mean, it's still early.
You understand what I'm talking
It's still very early. We're
Yeah,
still
right
scrubbing.
now, the estimate's on 26, it's about a 1.7% increase over 25. Kyle's 26 expenditure estimates, 1.7 over where we were in 25.
And usually, I mean, I think even prior, the minimum had been like 2.5%. I mean, we're trying to hold the line as best we can, but I've not even seen everything yet. So whatever his estimate is, I mean, we're still having to factor in things that we are unsure about, like fuel and just regular kinds of costs. So I don't, that's a tall task, but we'll see if we can get there. We tried to stay within 1% this year, which was almost impossible, but we did it.
I do have a question about maybe the time frame of, or maybe when was the last year that we were actually good with fund balance as it relates to credit rating? I guess that would be
Fiscal 22, 23.
2023. So from 2023 to 2026, you're saying the main reason why we're here is because we kind of use the fund balance to balance our budget. Were there other things going on too?
We had a lot of ARPA funds that were also embedded, so I think that masked some things.
What do you mean by that?
I love Terry.
Well, in particular, personal services coming out of COVID, you know, the market went crazy. We couldn't hire people, we couldn't retain people, we had to pay, we had to get to market so that we could keep staff. And so those personnel services costs kind of came into play. And as the years have rolled from 23, you know, those have continued to rise. And I don't think the market's getting any less competitive to hire and retain good quality folks. In the meantime, our revenues have leveled off and slowed. The growth has slowed. So while expenditures have continued to accelerate, revenues have slowed. And we had $6 million in revenue loss that we brought from ARPA over 3 years. So while those expenditures in those years were sort of starting to take off, we were bringing $6 million over from the special revenue fund, ARPA funds, that we got into the general fund. So it somewhat helped cover that initial escalation. But now that is there and is continuing. Revenues have slowed. We don't have any more one-time ARPA money to cover it. So now real operating revenues need to match where those operating expenditures have gone.
I guess I don't really understand how bringing in more money kind of put us in this situation. It seemed like that was helping us for the moment. It was a temporary sort of help at that moment with ARPA. Right.
And when we have positions that were not staffed, because of vacancies, et cetera, that just accumulated in that year's fund balance. We had some, it just sat there, so that the fund balance somewhat, it's not arbitrary, but artificially. It artificially was increased because of the number of positions that could not be staffed. And then the ARPA side of that did the same thing. And we knew in meeting our budget, we were using that $6-point-something billion that was available, and it would run out and be gone. And then it would have to be replaced.
Right.
So are you saying that the ARPA dollars then, so prior to ARPA, did we have any issues with our fund balance?
We were pretty well matched then.
We were pretty well matched. So ARPA sort of created an artificial increase, but it did not per se do anything drastically different than what to our fund balance and the rate.
Yeah, I kind of refer back to the slide that I showed in March. It's like I showed like pre-COVID, what our expenditure growth was, our revenue growth, and then during COVID, the kind of the COVID years you call, where expenditures were kind of exploding, revenues were also going up because sales tax was high and we were bringing in some revenue loss. But now that expenditure line, because so much of it is personal services, continues to grow, while you know revenues have leveled off. The one-time is gone, sales tax has plummeted, and so the last 2 years is where we've taken the hits to fund balance because of that expenditure growth, where we've been able to appropriate lots of fund balance, but we never used it because revenues would always come in, well, as we saw there, close to 100%, and expenditures never did. So even though we appropriated the fund balance, we never used it.
And our vacancies are better, so, you know, we're doing a better job retaining staff. than before. And so I think it's just a combination of a lot of things. But fundamentally, revenue has to match expenditures.
And now it doesn't. It did pre-COVID, it doesn't today.
So I do recall, excuse me, I do recall that in maybe the last budget cycle workshop, there was an issue with payroll. And that was also a part of, fund balance that we may have been spending that we didn't understand was, in effect, kind of depleting fund balance.
Yes, because any excess over the 14%, we were taking out and doing capital projects with it. And that could have stayed in there. And again, it hadn't been a problem in years past because structurally we were more balanced. But during those same years when expenditures were taking off, when we became imbalanced from a revenue and expenditure standpoint.
And the salary increase we did that big salary study, if my memory's right, the total of actual cash to make that work was about $8 million in 1 year. So that was a huge infusion of cost, and we never increased the revenue to actually make that up. And you could argue the ARPA $6 million did it for 3 years.
Exactly.
So it covered 2/3, 3/4 of it. It didn't cover all of it. So now that's, that raise comes up, not only is it there, but it has an increase on top of that with bonuses every year. And that's, if you look at our budget, that's driving. I mean, that drives it. And that's where I'm kind of getting at. Staying 1.5% a year is a challenge.
Yes. Any other questions? So we move on to the next happy topic.
So one of our next kind of budgetary pressures that we want to make sure the board's aware of has to do with our internal service fund, which is all about our health insurance plan. So Terry's going to kick us off, and then we'll have our consultants come out.
Yeah. So I think we shared with you in a prior workshop that the internal service fund, that is where we account for our health and dental plans, where the county puts in revenue or premiums, employees put in premiums, and then all claims are paid out of that fund. We account for that in its own little set of books so that we can see what's being paid in from contributions from the employer and employees and what comes out. And last year it was under pressure. This year again it's under pressure. And we've done a little projection here. This is where we stand as of the end of February, projecting, and so you can see that this is just the health piece. We're running a $3.6 million deficit as of the end of February. Projected out, really not much better, about $3.5 million deficit. Two things really driving that. Here on the employer premium side, we're projecting to be $1.3 million under budget. Our new consultant and I are looking at that to try and understand, because we don't think I don't think it's an enrollment issue because we're so close on the employee side, but really trying to get into what did the prior consultant include in that number that has put us so far off here, and then make sure that we don't replicate that or that we correct that in 27. This number here, our new consultants from Marsh McClellan will come up and explain a lot of what's driving that and really what the plans are to try and help reverse a little bit of that trend going into 27. The dental piece, looking better, a bit more balanced. Right now forecasting a $63,000 surplus at the end of the year. So combined, what it looks like, we started the year with $710,000 in fund balance. Actually, in this fund, it's called net position, but it's the same thing as fund balance. If we incur this $3.4 million reduction, a combination between the health and the dental plans, we're looking at an overall $2.7 million deficit position, which would need to be rectified before the end of the year. I think I'm comfortable sitting on this for another month at least and kind of see where claims are going, looking through the budgets that we have out there to see what can we shore up from available funds. Obviously, anything we take from the general fund is going to further exacerbate our ending position for the general fund balance position. And then what additional funding may need to come to the board to be requested so that we can end the year in a positive position there.
Did you include that amount in the $5 million deficit? So that's not included.
No. It is not. So with this, we're going to have our new consultants, MMA, come up and review some of the revenue and cost variances that we just went over and talk about some plan designs and recommended changes or suggested changes for 27. I think Shannon's going to
No, Shannon,
do the introductions.
our HR director, provide an update for the consultants, or introduce the consultants for Marsh McLennan Agency. Last year, we talked to you all about the challenges of our health insurance plan. We did change our broker. We have been with Mark III for about 30 years. And we wanted some fresh eyes. And so we started with Marsh McLennan. We hit the ground running mid-January to really do a deep dive into our health insurance plan and some others. And so they're going to talk to you about what they're seeing and then some potential recommendations for fiscal year 27.
Good afternoon, good morning, commissioners. I just want to introduce Matt Fry and Dawn Roberts. They're from Marsh & McLennan, and as Chantel was saying, we partnered with Marsh & McLennan in January, and since January, they've really taken a deep dive into all of our plans, specifically our health plan. And so they're going to talk to you a little bit today about where we've been, where we are now, and possibly where we can go. So with that said, I'll hand it over to Dawn and Matt.
Thank you all. So just a real quick overview of what we'll cover today is really just medical and pharmacy trends. Surprise! And the cost projections associated with it. That'll include kind of an overall executive summary, as well as benefit cost drivers. Really kind of dig into some of those cost drivers, market trends around that, and GLP-1 data points, and go through the current and renewal financials associated. We also have some information on plan design modeling and some benchmarks that kind of align you with your peer groups here locally, as well as some contribution modeling and what that result looks like. And we also have various budget scenarios, so different options that we can kind of look to try and solve some of the deficit.
All right, so starting with the executive summary, there's a lot on the slide. The top here, some of the drivers of the poor performance in the current fiscal year. Really, it's pharmacy, the GLP-1 cost. I'm sure everybody's seen the commercials. GLP-1s for weight loss specifically, those are trending about 55–60% year over year. And that's put tremendous pressure on the budget and the current year cost. Some statistics in terms of membership currently utilizing GLP-1s for weight loss, about 15.6% of the total enrolled population. And we project that to continue forward into 2026-27. Obviously, Ms. Terry hit on some of the current year performance, running about 7.1% over budget for the current fiscal year. My forecast is slightly more optimistic. Maybe that's where my optimistic piece is coming through in 25-26, but still projecting to run about 6.2% over that initial budget. And then looking into 26-27, so fiscal year 27, a lot of that driven here. You can see the per employee cost for medical and pharmacy. Obviously, a significant increase on the pharmacy spend. So looking at an initial budget without factoring the plan design changes, about 24.3% increase budget to budget. That annualized cost is going to be about $44 million pre-employee payroll deductions. We'll show those total dollars in a little bit. And again, our strategies in terms of plan design enhancements, changes, and then potentially removing coverage for GLP-1 for weight loss. It's going to gross roughly about $5 million in savings annually. So a decision point there, but an initial budget, obviously, looking at about a 24% increase.
I'm just going to say that that's sad to hear, because if individuals are, it's just for the weight loss, not for diabetes or hypertension, right? Mm-hmm. If we see employees are benefiting with the GLP-1 drugs and they're more healthier, would that help us in terms of their plan?
The data currently isn't showing significant health benefits.
Yeah, we will talk about some of that trending, just to give you a kind of a visual to go with that. Unfortunately, they're newer to the market, so there's not a lot of long-term kind of able to, justify some of the results with it. So we'll kind of talk through what we can see now, and then go through, that might help.
And I think the canary in the coal mine, which is that perspective, is the insurers that are covering claims for other health plans that are fully insured. don't cover GLP-1s for weight loss.
Right.
If they would project those savings, obviously they would want that.
Okay, before you leave that, is the state health plan covering the GLP-1?
The state health plan does not.
I did not think that, I thought that was
Yeah.
not just the city.
Yep.
Correct.
That was newer for this last renewal year. So I just wanted to kind of put a couple of trends. These are overall market trends, not specific to the county. However, things that people are facing. So obviously, different entities dealing with different buckets here, but you can see that just early onset of chronic conditions are really increasing, and the pharmacy aligned with kind of solving some of those chronic conditions is a direct result in some of the increases there. Increases in the use of GLP-1s, of course, there's a very strong result that is quantified for diabetics, cardiovascular, and other newer, like sleep apnea, is starting to come to the market as far as FDA-approved utilization for those drugs. However, the vast and increased usage for the weight loss component is driving some significant cost around there. Really just different regulatory requirements that we're required to take control of, ACA taxes, things like that, that really is just part of the market trends that are coming forth and everyone really dealing with. And there's just a different era of work. So it's really trying to, attract and retain clients. It's a very technological marketplace right now. So a lot of folks dealing with that. But as far as the county goes, you're really kind of, your result is coming from the GLP-1 usage for weight loss. So this kind of addresses your question here, but it's a graphical kind of visual that shows year over year, like kind of the increase of the utilization of GLP-1s, and this is specific for weight loss. So the hot pink color here at the top is the cost for the pharmacy, which is the GLP-1 medication, and that's per member per month that the dollars are quantifying. And then the gray at the bottom is showing the medical per member per month spend. So really what we're trying to see here is around January 2023 is where it started to take off more for the weight loss component. And as you can see, the large increase in the pink, which is the GLP-1 utilization, which results in the pharmacy spend or the cost, it's not impacting the medical at the same rate. Therefore, we're not able to quantify or justify that the users that are only taking it for weight loss are actually seeing a direct result, in the medical spend. So that's where some of the concern is, and where some of those decision points will come into play is if folks want to kind of put in that financial component where you're not seeing necessarily the results in medical at the same rate, if that makes sense. This is just another way to look at this. Really, it's a decision point for many, many different employers across the board. This is some benchmark data, and it's inclusive of all employers that with 500 or more employees across the nation. But really, there's about 35% that cover, which the county is part of that, cover with prior authorization requirements. So that is in place with the county currently. So not anyone can get a GLP-1. There are some BMI requirements and things like that need to be taken into consideration. However, those requirements aren't as stringent or strict as they would be if it was just for, a diabetic use, cardiovascular, sleep apnea, et cetera. There are 40% of folks that are not considering it at all, so not covering it, and that, like to speak to what Matt had mentioned before, all of our carrier partners, the large, Blue Cross, United Healthcare, Cigna, and Aetna, pulled it from coverage on their fully insured book of business. This really gives us a little bit of an insight as to how they feel about the long-term kind of support or impact to the medical spend, because they're pulling it from their own fully insured book of business. And then there's 19% that don't cover, but they might be considering covering, and then just a small fraction that cover with no special requirements at all. So.
And just a reminder for the board, we are self-insured.
Right, that's right. So the risk is on the county's medical plan or spend. This data is actually specific to the county, and it's specific around the GLP-1 utilization, just to give you some perspective. So this data is from plan year 20, or calendar year 2025, January 1 to December 31. And as you can see in this chart here, that shows the GLP-1 utilization from a diabetic perspective, that 1.8 million, or 1,700 scripts. And then in the same time period, your GLP-1s for weight loss is 4.1 million. So your total GLP-1 spend is at that $6 million point. The part that's kind of variable is this weight loss component. Okay, so don't at all recommend that you remove it for, treatment of diabetes, cardiovascular, any of the FDA-approved treatments. However, it's something to consider for a $4 million spend on the weight loss medications.
All right, so I hit on some of the claim numbers earlier. These are our total budget projections and forecast projections for 25-26, and then looking into fiscal year 27. If we look from left to right, we've got the overall budget. Again, Terry showed her number right around 36 million in total. Year-to-date experience running higher than we would expect it to be. Again, my forecast a little bit more optimistic, but still coming in about 38.5 million for 25-26. And then again, we see the significant increase as we jump into 26-27. This is without removing GLP-1s for weight loss or any changes to the health plan. I think the biggest drivers, you can see the percentages on the far right. Obviously, medical and pharmacy claims are significant drivers of that increase. We've got the stop loss, that's the reinsurance for every individual member covered, over $300,000 of spend. There's been some high cost activity on the plan this year, so the reinsurance cost is going up by about 45%. We are seeing a significant increase in pharmacy rebates. Again, that offsets some of the pharmacy claims that we're seeing with GLP-1s. The weight loss GLP-1s are highly rebatable, so we're getting a decent bit of money back there, but obviously still over expectation net. And then the rest of the items from sort of budget to budget are relatively stable. Again, looking at, without making any changes, about a 18% increase from how we're projecting this year to end into the next year's budget. Again, without any changes. And with the removal of the GLP-1s for weight loss, we'll show that specifically in a few slides. In addition to proposing some plan design changes, that'll decrease that increase by roughly $5 million.
So if we did nothing and kept the same plan, for next year, we would be looking at an $8 million increase, which is why we want to talk to you about some potential options.
And it's the same visual, just showing it on a per employee per month basis. Some of the administrative fees are billed that way, so no new information really, but again, still looking at that 17.5% change forecast to next year's budget with no changes.
So the next few slides, we're going to talk through kind of the plan design modeling that we came up with. And this chart here, it shows your current plan design. You're currently offering a single option PPO plan, which is a traditional type copay plan. And then what we're proposing is a dual option for renewal, so adding some choice and ability to kind of adjust some of the plan design. You can see here that your current plan is really going to remain the best plan option or the enhanced plan. And the one change that we're proposing is to add in a 4th tier specialty pharmacy copay. We do feel like that was something that probably should have been put into the plan previously and maybe was a miss. And so it's a really a way to kind of realign and make sure that we're collecting a little bit more funds for that specialty tier. And then putting a kind of a lower actuarial valued plan as a base plan. So employees would have an option to choose, which plan that they would like to go with. This one has a higher deductible, slightly higher copays, and then again, that 4th tier specialty copay.
So could I ask you a quick question? Could you just touch on the tiers? So for example, this is just me.
Yeah.
For the tiers, if you were to do tier 4, is that a name brand medication that's coming in at $200?
So typically tier 1 is going to be your generic medications.
Generic. Okay.
And then this is preferred and non-preferred brands.
Okay.
And then tier 4 is specialty. So specialty pharmacy is typically an injectable medication or something that's quite significant in cost. For example, Humira, that type of a medication.
Thank you.
Sure.
go to the next one.
All right, so we did put some benchmarking together for you just to kind of view your current county plan against some of your peer groups in the area. First one is Guilford County and City of Winston. So if you can see that Guilford County also offers a single plan option, whereas City of Winston offers a dual option. And then if you can see kind of the difference in deductibles, out-of-pocket limits, et cetera, compared to the Forsyth County plan. Right down here at the bottom, this is the actuarial value. That means that, you know, this kind of describes the amount of spend that's shifted onto your employees or the member versus the actual plan spend. So you can see that Guilford County is coming in right at 84.6, whereas City of Winston has kind of an 84.3 as a base plan and then a 89.3% plan as an enhanced. And the county plan is currently sitting at 81.6.
So just to kind of summarize on this, our deductible is $1,500, which is higher than both Guilford and the city. A long time ago, we had what we considered kind of a richer plan, but over the years to try to minimize, you know, the impact on employees and the premiums and the cost to the county, we've kind of shifted in a little bit of a different direction. So I just want to make sure you understand what the chart shows. But our deductibles, our out-of-pocket maximums, and all of those are, not that it's bad, it's just not as competitive as the others.
Right. So this is some additional benchmarking. This aligns the state health plan. They also have a dual option. They recently rolled out a high deductible health plan, which is able to be partnered with a health savings account, and also a standard PPO option similar to Forsyth County, where it's more of a traditional copay type plan. And they also have a enhanced PPO option. So they have triple options compared to the county plan, but you can see that kind of that state health plan plus PPO option is very similar to the one that the county has in place currently.
All right, so I wanted to show what it might look like from a payroll deduction standpoint for employees to access sort of this new dual option that we're proposing. In the blue there, the current monthly deductions to access your plan in place today. And what we wanted to show is what would the contributions need to look like in order to collect the same amount of money from those enrolled in the plan. So slight increase, it's about 3%. From current to the enhanced plan, which again, it's mirroring almost exactly all the plan elements aside from that a slight specialty copay. And then actually a reduction into the base plan. So obviously it's a less rich plan, offering it at a discount from your current single option plan. And with those deductions and about 30% estimate of employees migrating from their current plan into the base plan would yield roughly the same collections annually from a contribution perspective. Now for some of the good news. So this is again total dollars. Columns A and B are reflective of what we showed earlier. So the current budget in column A, column B is the initial sort of do-nothing budget for the health plan for 26-27. Column C illustrates just in applying the dual option plan design with a 70-30 enrollment split, but keeping GLP-1s for weight loss on the plan. I mean, you can see about $1.2 million in savings with that strategy. And then the far right, column D, illustrates removing GLP-1s for weight loss from the plan. And obviously what's going to change there, the gross pharmacy cost, about $6.1 million in savings there. Like I mentioned before, we're losing a little bit of rebate value. But in total, looking at about a $5 million decrease on top of what we showed earlier. So I guess $5 million, excuse me, is the combination of the dual option and removing GLP-1s for weight loss. So total dollars after payroll deductions, current budget around $30.8 million with both the dual option and removing GLP-1s for weight loss. Still an increase, but down from the $39.2 million to the $34.2 million. So that's where the $5 million is. Any questions? I think that might be, we showed the per employee graph
And
as
so,
well.
I mean,
but-
as you can remember, last year, we pretty significantly increased employee premiums just to try to, due to the budgetary pressures. And one of our commitments was to really try to figure out at least two plans. So one where their premiums could be a bit lower, even though deductibles, copays may be higher. But for those who are healthier, like that's a viable plan for some that will take that. And then a modest increase on kind of the enhanced plan, and we're calling the enhanced plan our existing plan. I mean, our hope is that as we continue to try to work through other strategies, that hopefully we can get an enhanced plan that's a little bit more comparable to maybe some of our competitors, but that's not our recommendation this year, is to try to hold steady on what that looks like. But I think the biggest decision point for the board, and you don't have to tell us today, is whether or not you want to keep the GLP-1s. Because again, if we keep it based on this, our total budget is 36. It'd be about $6 million increase, and without it would be about 3-ish in the budget. I will say, I know Guilford County does not cover GLP-1s except for diabetes. I'm confirming that with the city. I feel like he told me they don't, but I don't remember.
City
Winston. I asked and then I forgot the answer, so hopefully I'll get an answer on that, but I know Guilford does not. And as you can see, I think, again, it's a decision point for a lot of employers. We're going to be going into open enrollment for benefits soon, which is why we wanted to get the information ahead of you, because at a later meeting this month, we're going to ask the board to approve whatever you would like to approve, because if you do decide that we're going to drop GLP-1s, if that's a decision point, we want to start communicating that to employees like May 1st, so they at least have 2 months to figure out something to transition on it. So,
Just a comment, I'm a little surprised that the difference in the employee pay is only $14 a month in the two plans. I'm a member of the state health plan. So, I mean, I know there are other kind of differences, but their base plan is a 70-30, similar to this base plan. And the difference to go to the next level, their 80-20, which I'm sure has other, and I know they don't use the GLP-1s. So it's like $70 instead a month instead of 14, and that's a pretty big. I'm just surprised that, because I don't know that 30% will take. I mean, for $14 a month, will go to the base plan.
And we initially were looking at a slightly bigger gap. I think with the discounts for wellness, there's not enough room to move it much farther down than that. And obviously, we're also trying to maintain the amount collected due to the fund pressure as well.
And just to clarify, GLP-1 is not covered for anything, or just not covered for weight loss?
Just the weight loss
Just the
piece
weight
is
loss.
what's recommended.
That's what I thought.
Correct.
Not covered for weight loss, but covered for.
Yep,
for diabetes.
diabetics would still, or anyone else who's taking it for an FDA-approved diagnosis is able to continue.
Thank you.
So that's kind of all we have on the internal service fund. Again, just wanted to give you high level what we're looking at. This is a budgetary pressure for us, so you'll see it again. Okay, the next item is really, it's kind of still under review, but I'll have Kim Bussey come up and, because this is going to be a preface to the sheriff.
Hello again. So back to the sheriff's office. It's been a tough year thus far. A conservative estimate is that they will exceed their department budget by about $1.13 million this year. Some factors: overtime is expected to be exceeding about $958,000. For context, the overtime budget was increased last year. We have historically kind of been under budgeting their overtime at about $900 million. Last year, we increased that to $200,000. Excuse me. And then we increased that to $2.4 million. And so we're trying to right size the budget to get them to where they have an acceptable level of overtime to be able to stay within that. But we're still
So it was 2.4 million, it got increased or decreased to 2.4 million for this year.
Increase, so it was previously 900,000, we increased it to 2.4.
Increased it to 2.4 million, and you're projecting and exceeding the 2.4 by 958.
That's right. Yes,
so
sir.
We're looking at basically we're basically looking at 4 million.
I'll get you the exact numbers on overtime specifically.
I didn't do that right.
Yeah. But let me give you exact numbers department-wide on their overtime numbers, where they're living. I think the important part for our budget and fund balance, potential fund balance impacts are that, from a, department perspective. So there's, overtime is exceeding pretty significantly. There are still some salary savings, some savings in some other personal services, and slight operational savings that we can tap into before we get to this department overage. So overtime is one factor. Certainly, I think the sheriff mentioned the challenges with the NAFCARE and with the jail medical costs and pressures, and that some of the deputies are required to go sit with these folks that have to leave the jail and go to the hospital. So we think there's some overtime there. Getting exact numbers on that portion of the increase has been difficult. I think we're going to work in the next fiscal year to get some overtime kind of reason codes to be able to see really truly what these, what folks are doing and where these pressures are from an overtime perspective. But so that is one issue. But also, just in the operating budget, we're seeing this jail medical contract is going to be exceeded by an estimate of $660,000 this fiscal year, and our Aramark, our food service contract, by about $140,000 this fiscal year. And so we know that the ADP is much higher than it has been in the past. So that is absolutely a pressure on the sheriff's office budget this year.
And we do plan to bring a budget item for the $800,000, because that is unavoidable cost to the sheriff's office for the NAFCARE contract at Aramark. We do need to amend the budget for that, and that is going to increase the amount that we have to use on fund balance, which we told you we shouldn't use, but we really don't have a choice. So you'll see an agenda item probably by the end of this month for that amount.
And that was not included in your estimated 5 million fund balance. Dipping into 5 million.
Yeah, I think that was.
That was.
And we've had NAFCARE for how long now?
Is this the third year with NAFCARE maintenance? Third.
And 2 years. And the service level, how has that been for us?
I'm sorry.
Service level, after service.
I mean, well, that's kind of an ambiguous, I can't really answer it. I mean, we're doing the best we can. I'll leave it at that.
The reason why I ask is because, again, we want to continue to identify if we need to do something different than what we do.
Well, their contract is going to be coming up, and so an RFP process will, I mean, we had challenges with the previous vendor. I think it's a tough area to be in, but we'll do a request for proposals, bring that back to the board, and I don't know where that's going.
And to the point about the medical costs increasing, the off-site medical costs increasing, that's something that NAFCARE has, they're willing to come talk to us and explain that as a pressure across the state. They can dive into that for us if we wanted to do that.
They'll be here when it's a board agenda item to amend this year's budget.
So to the point of this challenge, we've been working with the sheriff's office to say, what can we do? What's the worst, best option that we have from a county perspective to tackle this increase? And so, we are working to kind of identify what that looks like within their budget, within levers that we have to pull to see what that looks like.
So with that, Sheriff, this was so you can come back up and provide whatever remarks as you.
I appreciate that. I appreciate you all. First of all, let me start by saying I'm glad that you recorrected that conversation. I spoke with the mayor while we talked the comment about that, because what he said was that he remembered that and they could do a little help. And so the other piece that I'm glad you spoke about was over how they keep using the slides, I do. But to be fair, the genesis of these slides are all, they are. They're all because we don't start at the same place. Fact checkers. And I know you don't want to hear about the shit you hear about the student guy. They don't start at the same place because we're the lowest paid deputies sworn from all those counties that you name. Those are facts. So I come to the table already behind. I'm competing in a tribe, in a market where people are moving around because the money matters. May not to you, Doc, but it matters. And so when I have a situation that I have to apply resources to, i.e. the jail, as the sheriff of the fourth largest county in the state of North Carolina, I'm responsible for keeping the peace. When I look at how to do it, it's different from how you look at it, Doc, because I don't have the expertise and education that you have, and you don't have the expertise that I have in this space. So I think that it's wrong for you to tell me how to do something or what the cost of it or how to function in a space that you don't have the expertise in. As you and I were talking about, well, you're doing this and you're doing that, there are some things that I have to do, The reason that you're enjoying the crime rate that is so low, it is because of your sheriff's office, what you all have done. Thank you, Ms. Wilson, thank you, and thank you, legitimately. I appreciate that. The things that we have stood up in this county, i.e. the real-time intelligence, have been a game changer, life-saving in this county. We started this game behind. When I first came into office, I started by saying we need more people on the street. We have grown exponentially since I came in. According to the stats, the census, Google, AI, whoever you want to check, we have 400,000 people that reside in this county, plus, according to Google, AI, and census. In order to have coverage, I have to have X number of people to cover it. I started asking for people in 2019 when I came in office, and I was told, don't ask for something until you have eaten what's on your plate. I said, explain that. They said you have vacancies. We have closed those vacancies. So now we're asking for what we were asking for to begin with because we were behind when we started. So that's what I mean when I say that. When you and I talk about the overtime, I can cut overtime here. Here's what I'm asking you, and I'll do it. I sent some of you the video of the melee that took place Saturday night in downtown Lisbon. I would gladly go out today, shoot out a PSA and say that I cannot do nothing in the city because of overtime. I can't help you with downtown because my commissioner, my county manager said I got to cut. I would do that. But what you need to understand by doing it, you're putting people at risk. Our presence matters. The reason some of you all see more deputies in your neighborhood, I think I shared this with you all. When we created the ARCH, everybody that's elected, we put you in our system, which means that you're going to see more of our people coming by your house. It's called coverage. It's called real time. It's called making sure that wherever you live, whether you live in the wealthiest part or a different part, we want to make sure as a county commissioner, you see what you pay or what you give to make sure that not only you're safe, but the community in which you live is safe. I don't specifically answer calls and listen, but what we do is we have a thing called saturation control. And that is when the police department, regardless of what y'all have heard, comes to the sheriff's office and say, Kimbrough, I need y'all this weekend. Fact checking. We met last week with Jim O'Neill, the police chief, Kernersville, to talk about how we're going to address the upcoming issues that we have. These spot-up parties, twerk parties, the fighting that you see downtown. Now, I can't do that without paying overtime. The coverage to have people sit at the detention center, at the hospital, I have to do that. I have to do that. Because I can assure you that the men and women in the sheriff's office would love to say, hey, I want to be with my family. I would love to not have to do what I do. I would love to do that. I can't tell you when I've had a week vacation since 2017. I can't tell you that. All I'm saying is this. Fund me at the level in which I can provide the services. Because here's what I will tell you. Even though my men are the lowest paid, There's no benchmark to compare the sheriff's office to. There's no benchmark to compare us to. You cannot compare us. You can't. You can't compare us to Mecklenburg because Mecklenburg is not a full service. You can't. You can't compare us to Guilford. I love Ross. We want circles around everybody else because we are the Forsyth County Sheriff's Office. But I can't keep taking hits and cuts and this and that because if you do, you will see it show up. Because all of us are collective of decisions we have made. The issue that you all are talking about, costs going up for medical care, the issue that we're having now with capital projects, because we have kicked it, we have done it, and we haven't addressed issues as they need to be addressed. Those are not my words, those are your words. All I'm saying is this, and I'm not asking for nothing to laugh. I'm not. All I'm saying is that overtime with animal services, you're going to continuously see that because you and I are talking, you agree with that. Winston is getting free services for animal services at the tune of 80% of the calls are in Winston-Salem, and we ain't charging a dime for it. So it don't make sense for me to say I'm going to send animal services in there, but you don't want me to send people that will serve and protect people. Make it make sense to me. Because the people in the city pay county taxes. And if you want me to stand up and say, hey, I got the suburbs and the donut, I'll do that. And if you're not going to fund me at the level to do that, that's what it will come to. And that's all I want to be heard of. And I'm sure you got some questions. Steve, do you like to add to the numbers that you want to share with them? Other than that, I love you all. I appreciate you. I know these are contentious times when talking money. I get that. But hear me out as well. Hear me out as well. Because safety and security in this city matters. And here's the thing you got to be mindful of. The time that we're living in. You know, you see a lot of strange things happen in big cities, but we're not exempt. We're not. In order for me to be vigilant, in order for me to be proactive, I have to have manpower. I have to have resources to do what we do. We didn't get here from 7, 8 years ago to where we are now by waiting. We have been proactive. We were the first sheriff's office in the state to stand up a real-time intelligence. The second behind Mecklenburg, which had there 10 years ago. Technology that we have stood up have been changing lives and game-changing. The 3 parts that I'm asking for, they're not outlandish. I'm just asking you for a few people to run the real-time intelligence center around the clock so that I'm not waking people up in the middle of the night saying, hey, we got a situation that may be happening in the school next morning, get to the office and make this happen. I'm asking for people in patrol, positions in patrol, because we have been short before, but now we have the capacity to fill them because how we're doing it, we're creating our own destiny. Before we were waiting on somebody to start a school, waiting on this. Now we are about to be where we need to be if I can get some of what I'm asking for. The domestic violence unit, right? Domestic violence in this community needs attention. I could easily sit back and say that's somebody else's problem, but I'm not built like that. And I thank you all for your time. I know it's lunchtime, but I'm not.
Just stay for a minute.
Sure.
You know, we had a slide up earlier about the responsibility, the Fiscal Control Act and the responsibility of the county manager for our budget. So it is clear that every department should be within their budget. You're already anticipating to be 1.1 billion out of it. It's in violation of the Fiscal Control Act.
But why am I?
Well, let's just acknowledge you're behind it. And let's acknowledge that your responsibility is to manage your budget.
He also said I couldn't control the 800,000.
We're going to help. We've acknowledged that piece.
That's a part of 1.2
you
you're
cannot
talking about.
control that.
That's part of 1.2 you're talking about. So you
No,
can't say.
it's not.
Is it not? It is, man. She said it is. I think you're confused, Doc. She's saying it is, you saying it's not. There's confusion in the crowd.
Well, there's overtime overages of over 900,000. Your overtime budget was increased by 800,000, and now it is 900,000 beyond that. I can't add those two numbers together, and that's 1.7 million over budget for overtime. I can do that.
Can you help me with overtime budget, Madam Manager, because I think he's confused.
No, he is correct. In terms of the overage for overtime is about $900,000 that we know of right now. However, part of that is going to be offset with salary savings, so that's why the overall
And
right
that makes it-
now,
I hear it.
exactly.
I get it. The other issue is that you can't operate look, there are a lot of departments in this town. And the school is kind of a department in getting on local funds. Everybody's got issues. But the point is that once you get a budget, you gotta figure out whatever it takes. And if that takes cutting positions or whatever it takes, you balance the budget within your department. And you can't use your excuse that it wasn't enough to start with, so I'm really not over budget. The point is, whatever it is.
Those are facts.
No, that's not a fact.
It is.
Because every single
Put
department.
the 800,000 in the jail. Those are facts. So you can say that. You budgeted it a certain amount of money, but
You're
you
picking
didn't
out
include.
two small items. Grant.
I am. I promise you
want your
that.
blood pressure up.
Okay, thank you.
And I just need you to answer my one
Yes,
question,
ma'am.
and you can have this conversation offline with Chairman Martin, if you don't
I
mind.
choose
So
not
we
to.
can
Go
do-
ahead.
Okay, fair enough. What I would like for you to do is to continue to work with our staff, work relative to the numbers of overtime. I think we requested a report, in terms of where the vehicles was, with some gas and cars and all of that. If you could work with our staff, we're not micromanaging you. But we need the information to, again, appropriately budget in more years to come.
I'm glad
In
you
our
did that.
budget now too, but we need the information, right?
I'll do that.
So I wanted to say that to you, so that we're not having these backdoor conversations about the things that we need to help support what you're saying.
I love
Is that
working with my
fair?
county
I
manager.
know.
We meet once a month. We sit down and have a conversation.
How long ago did you get the request for the automobile?
I told her why I didn't do it yet. I
You
used what I
didn't
said.
want to do it.
No, I'll tell you what I said. I'm
Give
good
up.
enough to say
Give
what I
up.
said. But I need to say that though, because I think that you go down the road of disrespect. I'm
No
elected
disrespect,
like.
asking how many-
No,
how many
it's the
vehicles
way,
you got
it's the
in the
way
drive.
you deliver it. I'm gonna tell you why it is. I'm gonna tell you why. Because I told her when she came to me, I said, I don't trust where you're going with this. Tell me what you need and I'm gonna give it to you. Right? When she came the last time and told me what your comment was, well, we're gonna fund him based on him giving it, right? And I said, well, how about fund me based on what I've done, right? So I told her I would give it to her. We've had tragedy since that happened, so I haven't had a chance to give it to her. But I promise you I will give it to her. That's it. Good. That's it. I have no problem giving you that document. Because what I'm gonna give you is done, use the same metric you use with everybody else. The same counties use that same metric.
Well, thank you so very much, Jeff, we appreciate you.
I appreciate y'all.
I'll make one last comment, I'll say nothing else. There is a benchmarking at something that you could do.
What's that?
And compare yourselves with every other of you pick your peer group, and I don't understand Mecklenburg. I mean, I don't, because I understand, I heard the county manager say that Mecklenburg County is making a payment to the Metro Police. So they are paying for it, just in a different way. In any case, that's just different. Forget Mecklenburg, it's too hard to compare. But the others on that list, take a look at, the number of patrols per citizen that they're covering in their unincorporated areas. Take a look at the things where response time. Take a look to see where the comparisons are. So you're benchmarking results and you're benchmarking staffing, your inputs, and ultimately benchmarking your costs. And then you're able to talk about what you need is within.
You talk to me like I haven't done that. I have a master's degree. Listen to what I'm telling you. I've done SWOT analysis on every other sheriff's office in here. We are the benchmark. You can't compare us to Guilford County. Why? Guilford County is larger. We have more staff than Guilford County has because Guilford has 100+ shortage. You can't compare us to number 2, which would be Mecklenburg. You can't compare us because they're not full service. You can't compare us to Wake County. There is no sheriff's, and this is not me fact checking. You have one of the premier agencies in this country. You can't compare sheriff's office to a sheriff's office here because we have set the benchmark. We have technology, manpower. Gifford doesn't have a real-time intelligence center. Mecklenburg doesn't. Raleigh doesn't. So for me to go and compare us to another agency, thank you, I'm going. Love you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, the next item, and this should go pretty quickly, is our, just kind of fiscal year 27 budget preview. We'll give a little bit of a preview and then we'll wrap up for today.
So you see the slide before, property and sales tax is 75% of total revenue for the county. This is an updated number from our tax assessor, Amanda Markle. And so the April 1st estimate reflects a value of $66.4 billion. That's an increase of $704.5 million over the May 1st estimate. And it is also, which is an increase of 1.07% from the May 1st, what we use for the FY26 budget. It's an increase of 1.07%. That equals $3.6 million of additional revenue for 27. That's compared to the March 1st estimate was only $1.8 million. So that's a little bit, I mean, that is good news. I'm not going to discount it. That's good news from March 1st to April 1st of growth of $3.6 million. Mr. Linville, that would go to your new property growth or new property construction as well as part of that number, as well as some other increases. And we can dive into that and get that for you as well. What that component, what makes up that $3.6 million or that $704.5 million growth of tax base. And so again, this just shows you, so the May 1st estimate, again, that's $6.5 million of what the 1 penny was. And so we're still at $6.5 million, but closer to 6.6 on the 1 cent tax increase, or I'm sorry, tax estimate. And so yeah, $3.6 million is our direct tax revenue. You saw this slide earlier, so again, that's just where we are in terms of sales taxes. That's the exact same slide that you saw earlier, so you can see the struggles there. But based on those first 7 months, we are projecting we'll miss it for the 3rd consecutive year, and so we will be adjusting our sales tax revenue lower than where we were in 26 years on. Some additional revenue pressures that we have in 27. We mentioned it at the winter work session, the impact of federal legislation. Our administrative reimbursement rate for food nutrition has been decreased. We're anticipating a loss of $1.7 million there. Talking about right sizing our governmental revenue that we talked about earlier in public health, we are attempting to reduce expenditures as well in public health to again, make up for that right sizing of revenue. An additional, the Register of Deeds is a revenue producer for the county, and it will still be in 27, but it will be lower, a lower revenue producer there. Really, right sizing of recording fees and excise stamp taxes. There's been fewer deeds recorded based on fewer refinancing. So again, that's with the increased interest rates and all that stuff. So we just kind of mentioned that in the revenue pressure. As in terms of expenditure drivers, right now what we're projecting is an increase of $9.8 million for personal services. We may adjust those somewhat, but that's where we are right now. Medical fees, which is really our NAFCare contract, is a big portion of that, increasing $1.6 million. Special assistance in-home is something in the Department of Social Services. That's another, that's something that we can't avoid, and so that cost is increasing $573,000, 40% increase. Other impacts on the food service contract in the jail. Youth detention is increasing from, we pay $150 a day, I believe that's right, $150 a day to house youth in detention facilities outside of the county, and that's going up to $165, or is it going from $165 to? Either way, it's a $15 increase per night, per bed. So it's either $150 to $165 or $165 to $180. But anyways, that is an increase that it's materially not a significant increase, but it is an increase that we can't avoid. I believe it will cost about another $150,000 to $200,000. And then fuel uncertainty, just based on where we are right now. I filled up my car yesterday for $90 at $4 a gallon. So here you see, I think you saw most of these slides again in the March workshop. That just kind of shows what the base request is for departments, as well as an enhancement request and an overall request. And as you, what I will say is the school number is, we have not gotten the school number yet. That's based on, the number that we have plugged in there is based on the formula that we used this past year, which was basically the growth in the tax base, as well as any kind of growth in Article 46 funding. And so that's where that is. It also took out the SRAs and the school nurses, and anything we did for debt repayment assistance. I did see that the superintendent is presenting his budget to the school board on April 14th. So we'll have a better idea next week. There, and so, as we get through here, you can see, again, our base request is basically, is essentially flat compared to the adopted budget. There are some enhancement requests. Some of those are recommended, but not too many. You will receive more information on the enhancement requests, which are 64 total enhancement requests for 69 positions, about $19 million. This is a breakdown of enhancement requests, and you'll receive more detailed information on each of these requests as part of the budget. As part of the budget, if we don't give you a more detailed list beforehand, but it will definitely be part of the recommended budget that you received on May 7th. But you can see in emergency services the number of positions in emergency services and fire, interagency communications with some positions, and then each of the positions, or each of the requests from the sheriff, sheriff's office as well. Continue with the sheriff, and again, continue with the sheriff. And so, yeah, you'll see some special assistance increase there. Again, additional positions here. We don't want to, we could go, if you have questions, specific questions today about these requests, we can do our best to answer those questions. But again, you'll receive a more detailed information on each of those requests as part of the next budget presentation, if not sooner. And so, again, just to remind you, the important dates that we have coming up, May 7th is the big day for us, that we will give you something that will amount to about close to 400 pages of reading material, and we will have our detailed presentation the following week, and then the following Monday, May 18th, we'll have the public hearing and then workshops, and we'll hopefully adopt that. I know I expect to do that.
So we have 1 month to produce a manager's recommended budget. You've heard some of our challenges. I don't know what it's going to look like at this point, to be quite honest. But we wanted to just kind of get it out there. Certainly, we take this responsibility very seriously and want to make sure we're being good stewards of taxpayer dollars. But I did just want to be clear. I mean, there are budgetary pressures that we just simply cannot control. And it will be reflected in your priorities, will be reflected, and certainly It's a recommendation, and after I give the recommendation, it's your budget, and you decide what you want to do. But certainly any feedback from you would be helpful as we figure out what we're going to do. But it's challenging in a different kind of way than last year. I think last year was all about structurally balancing, right, Mr. Chair? Structurally balancing. This year, our pressure really is all about revenues. Revenues are just not where they have been, and we're going to try to hold expenditures as best we can.
Mr. Manager, I was thinking about coming over to be with you at Courthouse, which is your presentation. I'm afraid somebody will ask me if we're going to have a tax increase, and the only answer I can come up with right now is, I was going to say that you hadn't given us all the information yet, but I'm going to just tell them, you give us a lot of information. I hadn't analyzed it all yet, so I can't answer the question.
Well, I think the truth is, I don't know where we're going to be yet. We got some crunching to do, and we got a lot of work to do in between now and then. So the truth of it, we don't know yet. I don't know yet. I know we have some challenges.
And we've written down some follow-up items, and I've got a few more follow-up items, so write down as well, and we'll get back to you on all that.
We'll try to kind of get a memo together on the follow-up, so we can at least have that prior to May. And if there's anything else you need, let us know. This is our last workshop before the manager's recommended budget. Certainly if there's, if you'd like to have another one to dive into anything, let us let us know. We're happy to do that, but wanted to share with you where we are.
You've done your duty.
We're trying.
And more.
We're trying.
So with the school system, they will have their 15 minutes in our briefing to come and discuss their budget.
So April, when he comes, is just his normal update. He will do his presentation as well as precise text. Go back to that slide at the detailed budget presentation on May 14th. Yeah. But we'll know what they're planning on doing, because they plan on adopting it next week. So we'll know.
So we'll have that before they do the presentation.
We'll have that, because then we'll have it adopted. Yes, Wednesday at 6.
Cheeky for that.